He reincarnated into an otome game, not as the protagonist but as a NPC villain, fated to lose. No love routes, no plot armor, just strategy, rivals, and death. But this time, he's not following the script. He studied the system. Now he's breaking it from the inside. He's a mob with ambition, and that's a threat to the whole plot. Can a background character rewrite an entire story? Let's find out. This story began with the protagonist thinking. A mother with an incurable disease, a monstrous father, and a spoiled younger sister. This family was destined for a bad end. Reborn, he, Reed Baldia, decided to live honestly and change the future. He remembered that in his past life, one of the working days, he stretched while sitting at the computer. The protagonist said, "Finally a break." At that moment, one of the employees called out to him. She asked him how he liked the game she recommended to him. The protagonist remembered that, a few days ago, she came up to him and told him about one game. The girl noted that he would definitely like the game. Let him try it. He then promised her that he would do it. So MC answered her that it was incredibly interesting. Surprisingly, the mechanics there turned out to be more interesting than he thought. He especially liked the free mode, where you can write a plot for the heroine from scratch. The employee was happy that he liked it. He talks so much, did he really complete the whole game? The protagonist laughed and told her that it was true, he completed everything. The girl noticed that he had bags under his eyes, as expected of him. His name was Kanda Ichi. At that time he was 33 years old. He was an ordinary office worker who loved games and anime. The company paid for overtime, and you could also take days off. Nothing unusual, but this life was enough for him. However, the employees often had parties with business partners, and he was stuck in games all night. He did not notice how his body was at its limit. Standing in front of a pedestrian crossing, he fell to the ground. The last thing he remembered was the figure of his mother, who died several years ago. When the protagonist opened his eyes, he realized that he was lying in bed. Looking up, the protagonist noted an unfamiliar ceiling. He was overcome by a slight panic. Where is he? It seems that he lost consciousness while waiting for a traffic light. And then what happened? Reed threw off the blanket and realized with horror that both his arms and legs were short. He jumped out of bed and ran to the mirror. Seeing himself in the form of a little boy, MC exclaimed, "Who is this?" At that moment, a girl named Danae came in, wearing a service uniform. She addressed him as a master, and asked him if he was awake. The protagonist stared at her in shock. "A maid? Master Reed? I need to tell everyone this." At that moment, more people came in, judging by their uniforms, the same servants as the first girl. He looked at everyone in bewilderment, and thought, "Who are all these people?" He sat down on a chair, and looked at everyone in confusion. Garn said that they were very glad that he was okay. They were so scared when he lost consciousness in the garden. The protagonist wanted to ask Garn, "Who is he?" The servant understood everything and noted that he was his servant. His name was Garn. Reed realized that he had to pretend that everything was fine. He laughed and apologized for making them all worry. The servants looked at him in amazement. The protagonist was embarrassed. Did he say something wrong? Garn said that he thanked his master for such words. However, for them, this was too much praise. He asked Reed to call him by his name. The protagonist thanked Garn. The servant showed him a bell and told him that if he needed anything, he should just ring it. When everyone left, Reed grabbed his head. What was going on? His head hurt so much, it was as if someone's memories were entering him. He was an ordinary Kanda Ichi, working in a company. He had to go home. Suddenly, something began to dawn on him. No, he is definitely not Kanda now. He is Reed Baldia. Could it be that everything is as he understood it? He became a supporting character, Reed Baldia, who appears in the otome game Tokirella that he played, and must help the villainess who is bothering the main character. He was reborn into the world of the otome game, and not just reborn, but reborn as an evil supporting character. The most important thing now is for him to understand what is happening here. Reed rang the bell. Almost immediately, Danae came. The protagonist apologized to her for disturbing her. The girl, not believing her ears, asked him if something happened. The protagonist asked her not to bow. He was just checking. As if in passing, Reed asked her if he would be 7 years old this year, right? The girl smiled and told him that he had just turned 6 last month. Reed thought with annoyance that he was wrong. He said that he understood it. Could she tell him about his family? Danae, hiding her surprise, began her story. He lives in the Magnolia Empire. The lands of the Empire are the territory next to which live beastmen, dark elves, and other races. The head of the family is Margrave Liner Bardia. Among the nobility, there are neutrals, conservatives, and reformers. But his family is mainly neutral. His father is Liner Bardia, his mother is Nanali, his younger sister is Meldy. They all live together. The Margrave sometimes goes to the city to resolve political issues. The protagonist listened to her and understood that everything was exactly the same as in the world of Tokirel. Danae looked at him with concern and asked if he was sure that he felt well. The protagonist smiled at her and answered that she should not worry. He was fine. Suddenly, MC grabbed his head. The maid was scared and called out to him. The protagonist thought, what kind of reaction is this? It's like she's afraid of something. At that moment, his headache pierced him again. He saw himself falling on a crosswalk. Then he saw himself in the game, unhappy and screaming. The maid, meanwhile, tried to call him by name. The protagonist remembered that in the past he was capricious, and everyone was afraid of him. But why? His headache suddenly subsided. He told Danae that everything was fine, and also he asked her for forgiveness for the way he treated her before. The girl, almost crying, asked him, what was he doing? The protagonist asked her what her name was. She smiled timidly and told him that her name was Danae. The protagonist happily said that she had a beautiful name. He was very pleased to meet her. The maid, not believing her eyes and ears, said, how sweet. Then she sheepishly apologized to him and told him that it was nice to meet him too. The next day, in the morning, Danae came to him and told him to wake up. Opening his sleepy eyes, the protagonist looked at her from head to toe in confusion. The girl asked him if something had happened. The protagonist assured her that everything was fine. He couldn't tell her that he had fallen in love with her outfit. Danae offered to help him change. The protagonist pulled the blanket over himself and said that he could handle it himself. A little later, when the morning procedures were finished, he went down to the dining room. It was a huge room with a large table in the middle, around which servants were scurrying, setting the table for breakfast. Reed thought with delight, this is it, the aristocratic life. Sitting down at the table, he asked Garn why he was alone at such a table. Where everyone else? The servant politely answered him that his father was in town and his mother was unwell, so she was in her room. The protagonist said that he would go see his mother later. MC wondered where Meldy was. Garn, to his words about his mother, answered that she would be glad to see him. After breakfast, Danae led him to his mother. The protagonist thought that his mother's name was Nanali Bardia. In the game, she didn't even have a name. What kind of character was she? The maid opened one of the rooms and said that he needed to come in. The protagonist paused for a moment. Danae remarked that his mother was unwell today. Maybe he would visit her another time? MC objected. He wanted to today. It seemed to him that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The protagonist was puzzled. Why did he have the feeling that he was not allowed to go in? It was as if his body and heart forbade him to do so. The maid reminded him that his mother was not feeling well, so he tried to avoid meeting her. It seemed to him that he had not seen her for a long time. Was there something between his mother and Reed? He knocked on the door and heard Nanali invite him in. When he entered, his mother was sitting on the bed. She was very pale, but she found the strength to smile and say that she was pleased he came to her. Suddenly, he felt himself start to tremble again. The feelings washed over him like a wave. What was that? Nanali coughed. The protagonist turned to her with concern. She told him that she was fine. He sat down next to his bed, adjusted the pillow behind her back, and took her hand. The woman was touched by his gesture of attention. She thanked him. The mother continued. She learned from Garn that he lost consciousness in the garden. Is he sure he is okay? Reed told her that he is fine. He was very glad that he saw her. She said that everything was clear to her. Now she felt much better. The woman asked him for forgiveness for making him worry. The main character smiled and noted that there was nothing to worry about. After all, he is a Margrave, and their son. Nanali looked at him tenderly. After that, they continued to talk for some time. They both felt good being around each other. He tried to make her laugh by telling her different stories, and his mother laughed happily with a quiet laugh. After a while, he had to leave. Near the door, the protagonist turned around and promised his mother that he would come to her again. Coming out of her room, the protagonist thought that Garn probably knew what was wrong with this woman. Garn asked him if he wanted to know what Mrs. Stead Nanali was sick with. MC asked him. He knew something, right? The servant told him that he couldn't tell him that. The protagonist was indignant. He wouldn't stop asking him. He was asking seriously. Finally, Garn gave in, but asked him to keep it their secret. After MC promised that everything would remain strictly between them, the servant said that his mother was sick with magical exhaustion. Seeing the protagonist's confused face, the servant, with annoyance at himself, noted that he shouldn't have told him that. This disease is incurable. MC thought about it. Every inhabitant of this world has at least a little bit of life energy. It is called magical power. Usually, if it falls, it recovers itself. With magical exhaustion, natural recovery weakens sharply, and then the person dies. This disease without a cure is called fatal. He had a hunch that it would be the disease that Garn mentioned. Indeed, there was a debuff in the game called magical exhaustion. If a character is sick with it, then his mana is gradually depleted, and when it reaches 0, then his health begins to deteriorate. The protagonist looked around the room and noted that the books that were in this room were not enough. He will need to start researching how to overcome this ailment. At that moment, someone knocked on the door of his room, and Meldy looked in on him. The protagonist remembered her. This is the younger sister. Meldy? The girl asked him what he was doing. The protagonist answered her that he needed to find something. She wanted to help him. Meldy looked at him in surprise and asked him if he would be mad at her. MC said that he would not do that. He offered her to go into his room. Should she read a picture book? She, not believing his words, asked him if it was true what he was saying. The protagonist smiled and answered her that it was true. Just let her close the door. The girl rushed to him and hugged him tightly. When she calmed down, they sat on the couch, and the protagonist began to read her a fairy tale. Memories came back to him. When Melody was little, Reed was incredibly happy about it. But when his mother got sick, he probably tried to protect his psyche, like an ordinary child. Therefore, he splashed out his emotions on others, swore and fought. And Melody got all this too. They started avoiding each other, so they even stopped having breakfast together. The protagonist looked at her with pity and asked her for forgiveness. The girl was surprised. For what? She told him that he couldn't sleep in the garden. The protagonist was surprised. Did she know? He couldn't pretend that she didn't know. The girl answered him with simplicity that she hadn't pretended. He said that it was clear to him. Yes, she was very smart. The sister agreed with him. That's true, she was smart. Her brother had said it right. The girl turned to him and said that he could call her Mel. The protagonist was surprised. Really? She noted that her mother always called her that, so he could too, because he was important to her. The protagonist, with a voice trembling with emotion, summed up, "Good, that means he was dear." He thanked her for that. A couple of minutes later, the girl fell asleep. MC rang the bell, and Danae and Garn entered the room. The girl smiled and picked up Melody to carry her to her room. The servant asked him in surprise, was he with the little mistress? The protagonist answered that he read her books until she fell asleep. Garn tried to hide his surprise. He thanked Reed and added that he wished for everything to be good between them in the future. The protagonist noted that it would be so. She was his sister. Garn thoughtfully noted that he had changed so much after he lost consciousness. The protagonist was surprised, right? It seemed to him that he had not changed much. The servant apologized for his words. Reed told him that there was nothing terrible in them. When Garn left, the protagonist wiped the sweat from his forehead. He was scared, but it was surprising that the present him was compared to the past. So after talking with his sister and mother, he realized what he needed to do. In the game, Reed commits a crime together with the antagonist. When he was found guilty, he was exiled. But they could also send him to war, or even execute him. And now he needed to prevent this. To avoid trial and exile, you first need to make friends with the characters in the game, and avoid actions that could lead to trial, death, or exile. He carefully wrote it all down on paper and in despair grabbed his head. It was an almost impossible task. The protagonist tried to calm down and think rationally. The game characters live in the city and other countries. Therefore, he has little chance of meeting them, because he lives in the territory of the Margraves. Well, yes, he is a secondary character. You need to try. You need to train your strength to be able to survive alone. To do this, you need to save money, and most importantly, to cure Mom. He thought about his character. Perhaps these were Reed's feelings when he saw her condition. His beloved mother was weakening, but he could not do anything. His heart was breaking, and he hid his tears and bitter feelings. The protagonist noticed how kind he was after all. Surely, the relationship in the family worsened because of his mother's illness. He needed to bring peace back to the family. He needed to find a way to avoid condemnation. He needed to live according to the law. The protagonist remembered his mother, whom he also lost, and apologized to himself from his past life. He did not want to live through this again. The protagonist resolutely thought that he needed to start searching for information. Reed would definitely save his mother. In this world, he is Reed Baldia, who is only 6 years old. Now he is a handsome boy who has a perfect combination of silver hair and purple eyes. And he could remember the exact contents of the book he read. He simply had a super brain. The protagonist began to read many books. In one of the books, he found something interesting. The protagonist thought that he had already seen it. The book talked about the plants and ores of this world. They are called and look exactly like those in the real world. Now he knew what he had to do. At that moment, Garn called him, who told him that his father had returned. Reed, walking to his father, thought, today is the day his father, Margrave Liner Bardia, returned. This will be the first time he sees him in person. Garn told him that Reed wanted to talk to him. He hoped that everything would go well. He knocked on the door of Margrave's office and heard the order that he could enter. When Reed entered his father's office, Liner said that he heard that his son had fainted in the garden. How is he feeling now? The protagonist answered him that he is already fine. The father asked him what he wanted to talk to him about. The protagonist answered him that he wanted to ask him 2 things. The first is, can he give him a chance to learn magic, martial arts, and get an education? Why did he remember Reed, who was like in the game? Because he can change with training. That's the kind of character he is. Reed in free mode, which opens after completing the game, can memorize all types of magic. This could come in handy. However, his initial stats are very weak, and it takes time to level them up. It seems there are almost no people who would help him. But he was drawn into this grind, and he was able to use Reed. His father said that he had been thinking about it for a while, but put it off after seeing his mental state. Is he sure he really wants this? The main character said sadly, it was not easy for him to look at his sick mother, but he realized that her suffering must come to an end. He wants to help his mother himself. Liner looked at him in amazement. He answered that everything was clear to him. Then, he would find him a teacher. The father wanted to know his son's second request. The protagonist, embarrassed, asked him to give him money that he could freely dispose of. Liner, perplexed and suspicious, asked him why he needed money. MC told him that he had some interesting ideas that he wanted to implement. The father summed it up, that is, he asks to give him money without any documents. The protagonist smiled. He offered his father to invest in him. It was a kind of bet. The protagonist understood that he needed to prepare the documents, but it would take too much time. Sometimes, enthusiasm drives a person. He bet on it. He thought that since they were relatives, his father would give him money. Liner exhaled loudly. After thinking for a while, he finally said, so be it, he will give him some amount. But it will be too much for the child. He clarified with his son, he definitely has some kind of plan. The protagonist assured him that he had a plan. He thanked his father. Then, he timidly asked him for one more request. He would really like to have lunch with his dad and Melody. He felt like they didn't spend enough time together. His father was surprised by his request, but he promised his son that he would think about it. He asked if his sister allowed him to call her by her favorite name, Mel. The protagonist answered that she did. The amazed Liner noted that this was also clear to him. It was time for lunch. Almost the entire family gathered at the table. The head of the family, the protagonist, and Melody. The girl behaved completely at ease with her brother. They laughed and talked a lot. The father asked his daughter if he could call her by her shortened name. Melody indignantly answered him that she did not allow him to do this. She only allowed her mother and brother to call her by that name. The embarrassed father muttered that he understood everything. Danae and the other maid smiled at this. The protagonist turned to him and said that he would like to go and explore the territory today. Liner agreed to his request. He ordered Garn to prepare a carriage. 2 knights were prepared for the protagonist. Diana, standing next to Lubens, noted that they are always ready. MC happily thought that he would be guarded by knights. He replied that he was pleased to meet them. The protagonist looked out the window and thought that the territory of Bardia is located far from the city, so this place is called the border. There is a lot of empty space for creating production. Growing olives was his father's idea, but this is not just any village. Diana called out to him with a smile and warned that they would arrive soon. The protagonist thought that they did not come here to have fun. There are things in this city that they want to do with money. After some time, they arrived at the place, and he was surprised to notice that this is the largest city in the territory. While on the city street, Diana pointed out that he should not go far from them. MC noted with a smile that she was right about the city being very crowded. They approached Christie's Chamber of Commerce, and the knight asked if he was sure that it was here. The protagonist agreed and went inside. The Chamber of Commerce worker happily greeted them and asked if they needed any advice. The protagonist replied that he had recently sent her a letter. She noted that he was the owner's guest. Now she would check it out. After some time, the owner of the Chamber of Commerce herself, Christy Saffron, came. She apologized for the wait and introduced herself. MC thought that this was the only elf on the territory. Everything was as Garn said. The girl called him into the reception area and, sitting on the sofa, said that she was pleased to meet him. But was he sure? Was it worth leaving security outside the doors? The protagonist agreed with a smile and added that he wanted everything they were going to talk about to remain a secret. It was time to get to the main point. Does she know what lotion and conditioner are? He told her how he was reading a book a few days ago, noting that there was aloe in this world. Does aloe lotion exist here? Danae was confused and asked what lotion was. The protagonist was confused and asked if she didn't use it after she washed her face. Does she not take care of her skin? The girl was confused and asked what it meant to take care of her skin. She hadn't even thought about it. By the way, how did he know about it? The protagonist thought that he thought these were obvious things. It seemed like it was something unknown in this world. He told her that he just thought it would be nice if such a thing existed. By the way, aloe grows in their garden. MC took the maid outside and asked if she knew that it helps heal wounds. The girl asked with disgust, could this disgusting weed really do that? The protagonist thought about skincare, a huge land, aloe, an olive field. A new product sold to aristocrats, a luxury item. And then he immediately started making samples. First, he tried to make a lotion. Then he asked if they had conditioner, and he tried to make a sample from olives. This is knowledge from a video he watched to kill time. Christy, after listening to him, answered that she understood everything. The protagonist asked if she had never thought about or seen this. She answered that she heard about it for the first time. If such a thing existed, she would know. But so far there is no thing. It is just an idea. MC happily thought that everything is going as he thought. Now something can come of it. He took out the jars with a smile and exclaimed what he brought. The girl asked in surprise, did he already have samples? She took it and asked if she could try it. The protagonist agreed, and Christy took off her glove and applied the product to her skin. A moment later, she delightedly noted that it had become much better. She had long suffered from dry skin and thought that such a product could only exist in her dreams. This would sell well. The protagonist replied with a smile that he was glad that she liked it. They would definitely make a product out of it. MC shook her hand and said that he would give her the conditioner. Let her definitely try it. He thought that after this conversation, they began to think about their further actions. He was thinking about creating personal assets. To do this, he needed to find loot grass and moon grass to make a cure for magic exhaustion syndrome. Christy thought hard that he was scaring her. When she received the letter, she could not believe that a child would start talking about trade. She left the Saffron family chamber of commerce and opened her own. She didn't think she would have to listen to the Margrave's son's nonsense. After a while, Emma noticed that she was in a good mood. Christy replied that they would soon have a lot of work. At this time, outside, Lubens asked the protagonist if he had succeeded. He happily agreed and said that she had listened to him with pleasure. Now they were on friendly terms with the Chamber of Commerce. But they couldn't relax. He thought that if he were to do nothing, a terrible future awaited him. There was no time to doubt. He needed to earn money and start a new life. Suddenly, the protagonist felt that someone needed help. He called out to a lonely girl and wondered if she had gotten lost. MC approached her and asked if she was okay. He was from the Margrave's family. He thought that she needed help. The girl replied that she was lost and could not find her guide. The protagonist thought that he knew it. He wondered where they had parted ways. They would help her find the guide. After some time, the guide herself came across them and, bowing, thanked him. The protagonist replied that she should not bow. It's natural to help girls in trouble. After some time in their house, the guide excitedly said that thank God that she was okay. The princess herself noted that she needed to know the name of that boy. She answered with a smile that perhaps she had fallen in love. In the meantime, the protagonist went back. Sitting in the carriage, Lubens called out to him and asked if he was sure that he should not have found out the name of that girl. Hearing nothing in response, he looked at him and noted with a smile that he had fallen asleep. They needed to return to the mansion. After some time, the teacher Sandra came to the protagonist. She introduced herself with a smile and said that she would be teaching him magic. She was pleased to meet him. He happily replied that he was pleased too. MC thought that he had been waiting for this day. It seemed that Reed could use all types of magic. Sandra sat him down opposite her and asked if he had ever used magic. He replied that no, he had never used it. He had only read about magic in books. The girl began to explain that in order to use magic, one had to convert his life force into magic power. Only then would they be able to use magic. That is, first he had to learn to convert life force into magic. It was not that easy, but she would tell him how to do it. Let him rely on her. The protagonist was surprised to think that she loved magic. Sandra added that it would be easier to show how it was used in real life. They needed to go to the training building. After a while, they came to the right place. The girl created a magic fireball and launched it into the ground. The protagonist exclaimed in admiration that this was very cool magic. The teacher explained that if you remember the image of magic in your head well, you can use it without a spell. But they won't learn it right away. First, they need to learn how to use magic power. MC started trying to do something and thought that he didn't understand anything. Maybe he didn't have talent? Sandra noted that it didn't seem to work right away. There's one piece of advice for converting magical power. Does he want to try? The protagonist agreed and thought that he had a bad feeling about this. The girl came up to him and said, let him give her his hands. In an instant, the protagonist began to get an electric shock. He screamed in fear. What was this? It felt like he was about to explode. Sandra replied with a sly smile that it was okay. No one had ever been torn apart. MC thought that he felt like something was tearing his insides out of his body through his hands. It was a very strange feeling. She was just kidding. She was doing it on purpose. A moment later, the teacher let him go and noted that it was all over. The protagonist fell to the floor and thought that it was just torture. She explained that she had just given him a forced conversion of magic power. He needed to practice a lot to learn how to control magic power on his own. But if another person forced him to feel the conversion, it would take much less time. But it was a little painful. The protagonist thought with displeasure that she should have told him this in advance. But now he felt that there was something inside him. Sandra smiled and noted that it was not interesting at all. Now it was time for them to try converting magic power again. He had already felt it, right? This was the source of magic power. Now this source needed to be converted into magic. Let him imagine compression. Then he will feel something extraordinary. MC began to imagine and suddenly felt magical power. Sandra said with a smile that now he should transfer the magical power into his fists. Let him remember the fireball she showed him. He should have an image of magic in his head in order to use it. When he has an image, let him pronounce the name of magic. direct it to the target, and use it. The protagonist began to remember and thought that he needed to gather magical power into his fists as the teacher showed. Make a ball and direct it to the target. In an instant, he released a powerful magic ball and directed it to the target. After that, the protagonist joyfully exclaimed that he had succeeded. Sandra, in wild shock, noted that she did not think that he would be able to advance so much in using magic in a day. If a person has learned to convert magical power, he will not be able to use magic immediately. It takes a lot of effort to remember the image. He has a great imagination, and maybe he is a genius. After some time, MC thought that he was able to make a few more fireballs, and they all hit the target. He tried to use it without a spell, and he succeeded. After training, Sandra, seeing his condition, noted that it seemed that he had less magic power. Now they need to give a lecture. The protagonist replied that he probably overdid it a little. They returned to the office, and the girl said that all people are born with their own amount of magic power, but everyone has the same amount. The more often you use magic, the more its amount becomes. The protagonist asked if there was a way to restore lost magic power. Sandra answered that at the moment there is only one way. Many countries are trying to make a recovery potion, but so far no one has succeeded. MC thought that now there is no recovery potion that was in the game. The teacher told him about magic elements and special magic. The girl explained that in order to use magic like fireball, you need to transfer magic power into fire and water. Absence of element also refers to the magic element. It is magic that has the same auxiliary role as force transfer of magic power. She came up with it. Magic is not that simple. You can even create your own magic. The protagonist responded in surprise. This is very interesting. Sandra noted that he has just started learning. He needs to get used to magic power. He happily responded that he will try. MC thought that it was great that he became stronger. After some time, he was doing warm-ups outside. Lubens called out to him in confusion and asked what kind of strange movements he was making. The protagonist responded in surprise that it was a warm-up. Isn't he warming up? He replied that he was running, but he doesn't make such strange movements. The protagonist thought with a smile that there was no such thing as a warm-up in this world. It seemed that he had confused him. Today, Knight Lubens taught him martial arts. In his past life, he hadn't moved much, so he didn't really believe in himself. He couldn't avoid physical activity because he still needed to change the future. Lubens began dictating his movements. First, he asked Reed to take a stance, then to swing. When the protagonist did everything, Lubens praised him. It was not bad. After that, he suggested that the protagonist practice. Reed was surprised. Really? The guy took the sword and suggested that he hit wherever he wanted. MC agreed with his proposal. He struck him first. Lubens blocked his attack with a small push. The protagonist fell to one knee, but he quickly got up and began attacking his opponent again. MC was surprised that this was happening. His body became very light. He had so much fun swinging a wooden sword. His movements became more confident and more precise. He happily thought that it was all thanks to him, or rather Reed's high physical abilities. As if he was capable of anything. Lubens, seeing that the protagonist was tired, told him that they should call it a day. MC agreed with him. His ally noted in surprise, wow, he could even become better than Mr. Liner. The protagonist was pleased to be praised, but he had never won. He was very sorry. Could he do anything about it? An idea came to his mind. He asked Lubens if he and Diana had been friends since childhood. The guy answered that they had. They lived next to each other. Reed asked if he liked her. Lubens did not expect such a question from him. He indignantly exclaimed, what was he doing? The protagonist asked him, wasn't he right? And his reddened face spoke for itself. Lubens did not know how and what to answer him to this. The protagonist decided to play heartless. He continued, saying that the maids and knights said that he did not get closer to her because Lubens was a coward and could not admit his feelings. The guy was indignant again. Is he a coward? He blushed with indignation and couldn't find the words. MC thought, did he go too far? Is he that angry now? At that moment, Diana was walking by. The protagonist called out to her and waved at her, gesturing for her to come to them. The girl approached the allies and saw that Lubens was sitting to the side, inflated like a balloon. She asked them if something was wrong. Diana chuckled and told the protagonist that Lubens was a bit strange and sometimes gets upset over simple things. Reed was surprised. Is that true? Diana asked the protagonist what he told him. The protagonist answered her. He told him that he was afraid of her. The girl didn't like his answer. MC thought, did it hurt her too? Something became uncomfortable. The girl turned to the protagonist with irritation and told him that she would find out all the details from him. Diana called out to Lubens. He jumped up from his seat. He exclaimed in surprise, Diana? What is she doing here? She asked him if they had finished training. He answered that they had. The girl said that if so, then she had something to talk to Reed. She turned to the protagonist and asked him if he was okay with it, right? MC answered that he was ready to talk. Diana suddenly rose in the list of people who should not be angered according to the protagonist. And he also realized that no one should joke about other people's feelings. The next day, the protagonist and his sister came to their mother. Reed began to read a book with fairy tales about magical animals. He voiced each character differently. It was so funny for Melody and Nanali. His mother praised him for reading so well. His sister exclaimed with admiration that he reads by roles. It was so interesting to listen to him. Reed thought that it was all just the correct use of tone. He was pleased that Melody was so happy. But lately, if he did not change his voice when reading, she scolded him. And this time she noticed that his voice was still the same. His mother clapped her hands with delight. She praised her son. She did not know that he had such a wonderful skill. He is just like a theater actor. Melody said, turning to her mother, that it was she who taught him to read like that. Let her praise her too. Her mother lovingly stroked her head, and at that moment, she began to cough. The main character, looking at his parent, was happy for her. Today she felt better. But her complexion was not very good. The magical exhaustion syndrome that the mother suffers from cannot be cured naturally. Not all members of the Bardia family know about it. Reed told his mother and sister that their visit was over for today. Melody asked him why. He told her that they had a guest. They said goodbye to their mother and left her room. Chris came to him with Emma. The owner of the room showed him the bottles and said that the release of the products was already close. This was great news for the protagonist. After he gave the lotion and conditioner, they held several more meetings with Christy. He couldn't do the production alone, but with Christy's help, it became possible. The protagonist was surprised by Christy's abilities. The girl told him that it was all thanks to his assets. He thoughtfully said that all that was left was to increase the volume of production, and also we need to teach people how to use the products and how to take care of their health. The girl asked him again in surprise, "Take care of their health?" The protagonist thought that they needed to be told that there are different types of skin. Sensitive skin, oily, dry, and so on. When he finished his story, Christy noted in surprise that he even knew about it. He continued that measures against counterfeit products were also important. It was necessary to prevent the creation of products that could present their goods as someone else's. They could harm health. As a countermeasure, you can explain how to use the product when buying. And if the product does not suit you, then give the buyer the opportunity to return it. The first step for a successful sale will be service. Then, the brand logo will play its role. For this, the protagonist wanted to use the Bardia family crest. Well, and third place should be the help of other stores. His plans were to distribute the product not only in the Chamber of Commerce, but also in the Saffron Chamber of Commerce. And he also wanted to make Christy the face of advertising. The girl exclaimed in surprise, "Should she be the face of advertising?" Reed answered her that she understood everything correctly. He believed that she would be perfect for this. A few days after this conversation with the girls, the protagonist came to his father and told him his plan. He added that he would ask Christy to perform the most important task, to present the goods of the Magnolia Empire. Liner, having thought about his words, said that he understood everything. If there is such a good product, then it can be presented to their majesties. The protagonist noted that when his father goes to the capital, he plans to ask the representative of the Chamber of Commerce, Christy, to accompany him. Liner was surprised, that is, it will not be him. The protagonist rightly pointed out that he was not old enough to explain what part of a woman's body is related to her beauty. It would just sound unconvincing. He thought that Christy would be perfect, because she had an elegance that was unique to her. His words made Liner think. Protagonist laughed. He remarked, "Probably beast men who saw Christy's beauty would want to give her as a gift to their wives and daughters." Liner looked at him in bewilderment. He thought, "Is this a 6-year-old talking?" Reed looked at his father's distrustful look and assured him, "Really, that would be it." The head of the family allowed it. He added that then he would go with a representative of the Chamber of Commerce to the city. The protagonist thanked him. When he talked to Christy about advertising, the girl sheepishly said that she was not very confident in herself, but she would try. Then she remembered something, and she showed him a vessel with a herbal flower. Reed was surprised. Could this really be moongrass? This is one of the few healing herbs that he asked Christy to find. Using it, his mother's illness could be slowed down. He simply snatched the vessel with the grass from Christy's hands. The girl was surprised by his reaction. The protagonist thanked the owner of the chamber from the bottom of his heart. The girl noted that he had nothing to thank her for. Let him hold his chin up. She added that there was still lute grass left, but she could not find it yet. Let him wait a little longer. A few days later, the father went with Christy to the city to make a gift to their majesties. The product for lotions and conditioners is grown on the territory of Bardia. The Chamber of Commerce is engaged in processing, production, and packaging. Also, the Chamber of Commerce is engaged in transportation, sales, delivery, and service. Part of the proceeds went to the protagonist. He moved away from the development of skincare cosmetics. His next product will be the development of a recovery potion from moongrass. Even if it is impossible to completely eliminate the disease, it can stabilize the condition until a miracle cure is created. But he had one problem. He said out loud that he did not have any pharmaceutical knowledge. Hearing this, Garn suggested to him that maybe he should ask Sandra about it. After some time, MC came to the teacher. She asked him what he wanted to know from her. He showed her a vessel with a flower and replied that he wanted to ask her about this herb. The girl asked him in surprise what it was. Reed said that this magical herb has the property of restoring magical power. Sandra exclaimed loudly in surprise, "Is this really a moon herb? It really exists?" The protagonist shuddered from her surprise. The teacher noticed his reaction. She apologized to him that she exclaimed so loudly. It's just that she used to be the head of the Imperial Laboratory, and there they studied a potion for restoring magical power. The protagonist was amazed, thinking, what an incredible coincidence. Sandra told him about her business in the city. Elite mages were gathered there to develop a potion to restore magical power. She, who had long loved magic and left her mark on the study of magic, was appointed head of the laboratory. However, one day a strange thing happened. The goods sent last week had not yet arrived. This had happened before. She thought then that the development was late again. There was nothing to be done. She decided to change the method of preparation. But they should have already compiled a report. She was starting to worry. At that moment, a woman of aristocratic manners suddenly came. Seeing Sandra, she apologized to her. The girl asked her what was wrong. The woman grinned and answered her that nothing. She thought that she was seeing such a guest in the palace for the first time. She was just worried while all sorts of mice were running around here. Then the woman asked her what was going on with the progress. She was the head developer, right? Sandra told her that it was so. Some aristocrats did not like them. They did not like that they sent a large sum of money to God knows who and God knows what for. People began to leave because they did not see the result. Therefore, Sandra took responsibility and left the laboratory. She renounced her family, fearing to blow up a scandal with her resignation. Everyone said that she could not fulfill the state order. She deserved only execution or exile. And when everyone had already begun to forget this story, Margrave Liner hired her as a teacher, and so she ended up here. The protagonist wondered what kind of troubles she had, and he would have to force her to conduct such a study again. He told her that he wanted to save his family. He asked her to help him with this. The girl asked him again in surprise, "Family?" MC said that it was a secret for everyone, but he could trust her. His mother was sick with magical exhaustion syndrome. There is no cure yet. Therefore, he wants to make a potion to restore magic power, to at least prolong her life a little. He looked at her carefully and noticed that he needed Sandra's powers. He would like her to help him make this potion. The girl burst into tears and thought that she would return that debt. She answered the protagonist that she agreed to his offer. If she suits him, then she will help him. She will do everything to save his mother. The protagonist happily grabbed her hand and thanked her. After that, he promised the girl that he would prepare a laboratory for her and other things that she might need. Sandra was fired up with an idea. When she was in the city, she found the moon grass there, but she could not get it. There was no information about this grass left in the lab, none at all. The girl turned to him and suggested that the protagonist call her simply by her name. But in class, she is teacher Sandra for him. The protagonist answered her that he understood everything. Both were in a great mood from the successful alliance. Then Reed thought, I wonder how things were going with his father and Christy? Meanwhile, in the city, a girl approached Christy. She told her with admiration that their lotion and conditioner were simply amazing. Could she sell her the recipe and the rights to the Magnolia Empire? Christy was surprised by her offer and thought about the protagonist in despair. Sometime later, during a break on the way to the capital, Liner told Christy that they would be arriving soon. Is she ready for the presentation? Christy told him excitedly that she was ready. This is rare for her, but she will do her best. The Margrave warned her to be on guard and to be more careful with her words and behavior. The capital is a scary place compared to it. A Margrave like him seems like a speck of dust. Emma looked out the window and noticed that the capital is already visible. Christy exclaimed that she was always amazed by this fortress city. The location of the capital was really very beautiful. There were many snow-white doves flying above the capital. The imperial capital Magnolia is surrounded by 2 walls. Aristocrats live inside the palace walls, and the walls themselves are about 5 meters high. Behind the wall, there was an ordinary city. It was protected by a wall. Emma noticed that even the Elven Kingdom was not that big. Christy looked around. She noted that Mr. Liner had already gone ahead. Only they had been standing for a long time. They were told that they had offerings, asked to show them. Christy was perplexed when Liner told the guards that he trusted the 2 women sitting by the carriage. Did they understand everything? The guard examined the carriage and allowed them to pass. After a while, the Margrave, walking along the corridor of the castle with the girls, told them something. The warrior they had just seen was a ward of Count Laurent, who had encroached on their rights. Christy assumed that he probably wanted to find out information about the goods. She apologized to Liner and said that she would be more careful. The Margrave answered her that it was his own fault. He did not explain to them. He did not know that such a thing could happen right during the interrogation. Suddenly, the voice of Count Laurent was heard. He clapped his hands and said, "Who do they have here?" "Yes, it is Margrave Liner himself. He did not expect to see him here." The protagonist's father thought sarcastically, "And here he is." He greeted the Count out loud and noted that they had not seen each other for a long time. Laurent answered him that it was so, but it is because the Margrave lives far away. He noticed Christie and asked Liner, "Who is this beauty?" The girl smiled at him and told him her name. The Count stroked his chin and said, "Is she the same hooligan who escaped from the Chamber of Commerce?" He continued that there were rumors about her here, although they were not confirmed. Christie tried to control herself. She calmed herself down. The Count noticed Emma and asked the girl if that was the beastman behind her. It seemed that she was really friends with animals. Christie thought indignantly. Calling beastmen animals was considered an insult. He was saying this on purpose to anger her. She decided that she would not allow this rude man to insult Emma. The girl clenched her fists, but at that moment, Liner intervened. The Margrave turned to Laurent and told him that, on his part, this was too much. They had come to an audience with their majesties. Wasn't it stupid of him to insult them? The Count immediately became embarrassed and asked him for forgiveness. A little later, when Liner and the girls were sitting in the waiting room, Christie asked him who it was. The Margrave answered her that it was Laurent Galliano. He adored money. Emma turned to the girl regretfully. She asked her for forgiveness. This all happened because of her. Christie hugged her assistant, calming her down. She said that it was not so. She was not guilty of anything. Thus, Count Laurent was blacklisted in Christie's chamber. The Margrave told them not to worry. Their majesties were ordinary people with common sense. At that moment, a servant appeared. She apologized to them for waiting and said that she would take them to the emperor. A short time later, the allies appeared before the imperial couple, politely kneeling before them. All the representatives of the nobility were already in the audience hall. Emperor Erwin Magnolia noted that they made them wait. His wife, Empress Matilda Magnolia, smiled warmly at the allies. Liner introduced himself to them. He added that he had come to their palace. Erwin apologized to him for always having to come from afar. The emperor nodded at the girls. He asked Liner, who is with him. Christie said that she is the daughter of Baron Martin Saffron from the Kingdom of Astolia. Her name is Christie Saffron. The emperor chuckled. He heard that she is from the Chamber of Commerce, but he did not know that she is the daughter of a baron. The girl answered him that her father had only recently been given a title. Erwin noted that if she is the daughter of a nobleman, then he addressed her incorrectly. Laurent almost burst from his stupidity. She was not at all a strange girl from the Chamber of Commerce. Matilda turned to her husband. She told him that she wants to try the goods as soon as possible. The emperor came to his senses and asked his guests to show them his goods. Christie handed them 2 bottles with a coat of arms. She said that she brought them this. She mentally noted that the reaction of the men was 0, but the empress, servants and maids were interested in the products. The girl said that she used the lotion and conditioner herself. Mathilde asked her if she could touch her hair. Christie didn't see a problem with that. She approached the empress, who touched her hair. Mathilde was surprised. Wow, it was amazing. She had never seen such smooth and shiny hair before. She added that only women could understand the true value of such hair. Christie asked her if she would like to try the lotion. Laurent turned to the empress irritably and said that it could be dangerous. Matilda winced in displeasure. Actually, she was talking to Christie. When did she ask his opinion? The count fell silent, ashamed. The owner of the stall said that the lotion removed dry skin. The emperor's wife rubbed the lotion on her hands and asked the girl with a smile, was she going to bribe all the ladies of this palace? After that, she examined her hands and noted with delight, wow! She was even ready to call it the best product. Christie bowed her head and thanked the empress. Matilda, with a satisfied expression, said that this lotion and conditioner are simply amazing. Could Christie sell the recipe and rights to the Magnolia Empire? The protagonist's ally fell silent in surprise. The empress asked her if she could hear her. The girl gently but firmly said that she apologized to the empress, but she could not accept her offer. A member of the Margrave Liner family participated in the development, so she cannot decide alone. Matilda objected to her. Margrave Liner is a vassal of the Magnolia Empire, so he cannot refuse them. The choice is hers. The girl looked at the protagonist's father, but he turned away from her, making her understand that he would not help her in this matter. Christie thought in despair that she could do nothing. She remembered how she had promised the protagonist that she would do her best. She had asked him to rely on her, and now she didn't know what to do. The decision came in 1 second. Christie straightened her back and told the empress that their Chamber of Commerce had risked their lives to release this product. If she wanted to take away their efforts with the rights, then they would better leave the territory. Even if they made another such good product, if they transferred the rights to its production, they would not be able to sell it. Instead, she could offer the Empress an alternative solution in the form of the right to receive the product first. They would try to always have the product in stock, so let her forgive them. Matilda, after some thought, said that she was, of course, very sorry, but so be it. All the servants asked her in surprise, was she sure of her decision? The Empress answered them that she was. Christie was right. If the rights of the people were taken away, then one day this empire would perish. She approached the Emperor and told him that they should take this opportunity to thoroughly review the rights. Does His Majesty support her in this decision? The Emperor told her that she was absolutely right. In the future, they would be more strict in enforcing the rights of the citizens, and of course, he would leave the rights to produce the lotion and conditioner to the Christie Chamber of Commerce and the Bardia territory. He asked his subordinates if they all agreed. They meekly agreed. Christie thought in amazement how suddenly everything began to go according to plan. She looked at the Empress's face, she smiled a mysterious smile, then she winked at the girl. Christie looked at the Margrave, who still did not turn in her direction. A sudden guess struck her. Was this all a setup? The Empress's behavior showed that her goal was not production and rights, but obtaining products. She could give orders, but that would be an abuse of power and would not be noticed by the other nobles. So she made her promise herself. Christie realized with annoyance she was simply dancing to the Empress's tune. She was just a speck of dust compared to this empire. After the audience, the allies waited in the guest room. Chris thought that she was very tired. Emma praised her. She was great. Liner noted, he told them that they needed to be on guard. Suddenly, the door to the room opened, and the maid said that their Majesty had come to them. Erwin apologized to them for coming so suddenly during their rest. They apologized to their guests that he and his wife did not even greet them. When everyone sat down at the negotiating table, the Emperor apologized to Christie for having to participate in all this. Erwin and Matilda explained to her what was really happening today. When the samples of the product were made, Margrave Liner had already given it to them. All this because the product was so amazing. Although a non-disclosure order was issued in the capital, rumors still began to spread. Among the nobles who heard this, there were those who wanted to obtain the rights to them. They set their sights on the valuable gift from the territory of Bardia, and it seemed that there was an opportunity to review the restrictions and rights of the nobles. Today was a productive day. Chris, having listened to them, smiled and told them that there was nothing to worry about. They had obtained the desired result, for which they were grateful to the imperial couple. Now, she understood that thanks to the fact that the production rights were given to Chris at the meeting of the nobles would not be able to get them just like that. Matilda noted that the girl understood their intentions so well, she would even like to take her as her maid. The Empress smiled and added that it was all a joke. The girl noted that her gaze was serious at these words. The Emperor stood up and said that he still had something to talk about with the Margrave. The men left. The Empress suggested that the girls summarize their conversation. She would like to clarify about the right to receive the goods first. Chris was surprised. Already? How fast Matilda is. Meanwhile, Liner asked the Emperor in surprise what he said. Erwin said that one country approached him about marrying a member of his family or a suitable aristocrat. Because of this, one problem arose. It turned out that there was no one more suitable than his son Reed for this appeal. At this time, Nanali was thinking about her health. She looked at the glass with the medicine. She had such a strange feeling as if something was coming out of her, as if a crack had formed at the bottom of the glass. The disease did not come to her unexpectedly. At first, she felt tired, but later she could no longer stand on her own. Could she do anything about her body? She began to think that her illness had stopped progressing. From that moment on, she tried to think like that until the night. She simply slept terribly. When her son found out about her illness, he began to snap at others. Meldy began to cry more often. Why was this illness devouring the hearts of her dear children? Yes, she was already in despair. Recently, Reed began to behave differently. He began to talk like an adult. At that moment, her daughter came to her. She was so happy. Nanali noticed that she was happy today. Did something happen? The girl with a wide smile answered her that her brother read her a book. The woman thought warmly that her son had corrected his behavior. He was trying to make friends with his family. She cannot give up. She can do it. She will not give up. She can defeat this illness. Meanwhile, the protagonist basked in the sun. He thought that today was nice weather. Then he jumped up and cursed. Father and Christie are trying hard now. He also needs to be useful. The protagonist decided that today he would try attribute magic, like in the game. This universe is very similar to the world of the game Tokirella, which he played in his past life. He received the necessary materials, so he developed care products. This could not happen in the game. That is, it turned out that if he goes his own way, he will have a completely different life. Walking around the territory and looking for a place for himself to experiment, he thought that his motivation is at its best today. Looking around, he chose a place for himself, deciding that this can be done here. He has already checked the fire, so he needs to check everything else. After some time, he looked at the ice block and noticed that he was able to do it. He needed to somehow name his attributes. He needs to come up with something that can be easily imagined. For example, a fire spear or a thunder spear. And during the attack, he activates the fire spear. Having tested everything, he was satisfied. The protagonist suddenly heard Melody say in amazement that he was doing real miracles. Reed turned around and saw his little sister. He asked her in surprise, since when had she been here? Melody happily answered him that she had been here since the moment he had summoned the fire. The protagonist was horrified. She saw everything. MC conspiratorially suggested that everything she had seen here would be their little secret. The girl was perplexed that his magic was so beautiful. He remarked he would read her a book, whatever she wanted. The sister happily agreed to this. The protagonist exhaled tensely. If everyone found out, all sorts of rumors would start. Melody asked her brother to show her his magic again. A few days later, the protagonist received a letter from Christy, who had left for the capital. Opening the envelope, he wondered, had they succeeded? The girl wrote to him that Margrave Liner wanted to deceive them. Count Laurent was banned from entering. And also, Empress Matilda is very dangerous. MC was surprised, somehow strange. What happened to them? An unknown count was banned from entering. The protagonist thought that his lessons would start soon. He needed to go to class. During class, Sandra said that in order to use attribute magic, certain inclinations are needed. She asked him if special magic requires special inclinations. Reed answered her that he did not know. The teacher admonishingly noted that it is important to be able to say that he does not know something. He thought that Sandra always praised him. The girl continued that the answer is obvious. Nothing is needed for special magic. The protagonist became interested. Does this mean that anyone can use it? Sandra answered him that this is not entirely true. You need to create it yourself, or get it from someone. The protagonist was surprised. Special magic can be created, he told the teacher. She already said that magic can only be used when an exact image appears in the head. Does special magic work the same way? The girl answered him that it is. Only you need to use strong magic and a more exact image. If something is missing from them, then nothing will work. And also, she added about receiving. Only the creator of special magic can transfer it to another. Both need to have enormous magical power. The protagonist clarified with her, a lot of magical power is needed, and if there is not enough of it, or the image, then it will not activate. Sandra noted that he understood everything correctly. She immediately changed the topic and told him she made sure that the received moongrass can restore magical power. Now she just needs to get a concentrate from it. The protagonist exclaimed in surprise, "Wow, what will come of it? Will it be a drink or a pill?" Sandra was embarrassed. She forgot about the form. Her head was full of the recovery effect. She thanked him for the reminder and told him that she would be right back and start creating samples. Reed was surprised, but what about the lessons? The girl, leaving, muttered that he would be on self-study later. She had no time now. In the evening, MC went outside again. He thought that in order to create original magic, magical power was needed. But how much of it did he have? Maybe there was magic, or a tool with which he could measure it? Suddenly the sky was covered with clouds, thunder was heard and lightning flashed, after which a downpour began. The protagonist said, "This is rain." He needs to go back quickly. He was soaked to the skin by the time he got home. The maids met him. He apologized to them and told them that he was wet. Danae exclaimed, "He will catch a cold. She will bring him a towel now." The other maids also bustled about. They were going to prepare a bath. The protagonist told them that he just needed to change his clothes. Let them not exaggerate. Danae categorically answered him that this was not possible. It was necessary to warm him up. The protagonist thought, it seems that they still remember how Reed fell in the garden. In the blink of an eye, the maids undressed him and immersed him in a hot bath. The protagonist enjoyed bathing. He had not bathed for a long time. He felt so good now. In this world, they dry themselves with a hot towel, so a bath is rare here. How long had it been since he bathed? He did not expect that he would do this, and in his own room at that. He wondered how much water was used for such an occasion. By the way, the numerical standards in this world are the same as in the past: meter, mile, gram, and liter. He had an idea, from which he quickly jumped out of the bath. After getting dressed, he found Garn and asked him for a liter vessel. Going outside, he placed the vessel on the table, stretched out his hands to it, and mentally filled this liter container with water made with magic. Then he poured out the contents and filled the vessel again several times. He decided to call it 1 liter. Now he was doing well. He decided that next time he would try 10 liters. Now, the protagonist began to repeat over and over again, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, 200, 300. This way he could concentrate on using magical power. He repeated his manipulations over and over again until he finally exhaled and called the number 980. He began to feel the depletion of magical power with each activation of magic. That is, there is a certain amount of magical power that is spent on magic. For water magic, 1 liter. So he has more than 980 magic power. The protagonist decided that he would do it with special magic. It became clear to him. Name of magic, measurement of magic power, measures in numbers the amount of magic power of a person. The protagonist decided that he needed to try it. He activated the measurement of magic power and realized that nothing happened. MC heard a system voice in his head that his amount of magic power was 80. He was surprised. A voice in his head, he tried to activate the measurement of magic power again. And again, Reed heard a voice in his head that his amount of magic power was 60. He thought, it decreased. So, to use the measurement of magic power, 20 magic power is required. The protagonist was happy. He succeeded. This measurement will definitely be useful to him. When he asks his mother to drink a potion to restore magic power, he will be able to see the result. Returning home, Reed noted that today he is one step closer to his goal. The protagonist came to Sandra, asking her permission to ask her one more question. The girl allowed him to do so. The protagonist said that he wanted to know how much magic power was consumed when activating a spell, and he created a special spell called Magic Power Measurement. Sandra asked him in surprise, was he serious? His way of thinking continues to amaze her. How did he create it? The protagonist explained to her the process that led him to create this spell. He was inspired by the measurement of water. First, he created a spell that produces a fixed 1 liter of water. Then he created a hypothesis about the numerical values of magic power. Sandra admitted to him in amazement that such an idea had never occurred to her. In other words, she also has the qualities of the element of water. The protagonist answered her that this is how it happened to him. Reed noticed that Sandra had some kind of strange reaction. The girl asked him if he was sure. This magic is currently unknown to anyone. If it spreads widely, he will be taken to the capital of the empire. The protagonist exclaimed in surprise, is it that serious? But anyone with water magic could have figured that out. Sandra noticed that he was not very quick-witted in some places. She suggested that they discuss ordinary people. The teacher explained to him that firstly, most ordinary people cannot use magical power. Therefore, they cannot use magic in principle. They do not know how to do it. The protagonist was surprised, but she said that everyone has magical power, right? The girl noted that this is true, but this is after they receive a minimum education. But most ordinary people do not receive even a minimum education regarding magic. Now, everything became clear to the protagonist. Despite the fact that this is a fantasy world where magic exists, it did not seem like it was used everywhere. It was not for nothing that he did not see many people using magic in the mansion. People tend to refuse to study something that can be tedious for them. It's kind of sad that in such a world there is no magic on every corner. It was wasted here. Sandra said in surprise, she couldn't even create a spell that produces exactly 1 liter of water. It clearly wouldn't be easy for her. In addition, she can't use water magic, which offended her. She believed that only a genius like him could do it. Now, did he understand? The protagonist answered her puzzledly that it was so. Sandra thought, it seems that this boy is even more talented than she thought. He asked her if he is a genius. Then she is even more brilliant than him, right? If he can be considered a genius, then his teacher should have been invited to the capital a long time ago. The girl smiled at him and answered that it was true. That's why she was chosen for the position of director at the capital's research institute. But she was immediately crushed by someone else's envy. She continued, the fact is that she was really invited to the capital as a genius. The protagonist asked her, was she waiting for him to do something like that, right? The teacher confessed to him. She thought it would happen later. For now, his talent should be more limited, but she was looking forward to this day. She wanted to be near him so that she could observe her research object, that is, a talented student. The protagonist was surprised. She called him an object of research. Sandra laughed and noted that everything was fine. Those who stand out become persecuted by society. But if he stands out too much, then no one will persecute him. Let him not let the framework shackle him. Let him go beyond them. The protagonist laughed. He understood. For now, he will try not to tell anyone about this. He thought, if she knew that this would happen, she could have warned him in advance. Surely she thought that it would be interesting. Suddenly, Sandra said that this is absolutely true. This is the reason. The protagonist was surprised to see that she was scaring him. She laughed and told him that he was too easy to read. Did he know that? They then continued working on creating a medicine to restore magical power. The girl brought a tray with samples and said that these were their materials. First, they needed to try the moongrass. The protagonist decided that he would eat it raw, in powder form, and boiled. So he wanted to experiment with all the options. Rolling up the sleeves of his jacket, he began to do what he had planned. The moongrass was quite bitter to eat like that, but for his mother, he was ready to do anything. After some time, he summarized that out of all the options, the one he ate raw restored 20 magic power. According to Reed, it tasted very bitter. He did not need any more. In boiled form, magic power was restored from 10 to 30. This is even worse. The bitterness only became stronger, and for the maximum effect, it was necessary to eat everything. In the powder, the magic power showed 50. It was the easiest to eat. You can mix it with water, and the effect was the strongest. but it was not tasty. The allies concluded that the last option was the best. There was a sound of clapping hands. The girl said, perhaps it was somehow related to the method of administration. She suggested that he roll the medicine in his mouth before swallowing it. He cursed, but did what she asked him to do. Sandra concluded that if they made tablets from the powder, then it would be best for his mother. He noted that they did a good job. He felt very bad, but now they have managed to create a medicine to restore magical power. He looked at the teacher and noted that she seemed to be having fun. She constantly asked him how he felt. She measured his blood pressure, saying that she put all her love into this medicine. The protagonist turned to her and told her that he would not forget it. Sandra answered him that in that case she would not tell him anything. The protagonist immediately became interested in what she was talking about. The girl answered him that he would understand everything himself tomorrow anyway. He thought at the same time that he had a bad feeling. The teacher noted that he could ask his sister Melody everything. The protagonist realized that this was a hint. Going out into the corridor, the protagonist saw his sister accompanied by Danae and another maid. He called out to her and told her that he was back. The girls saw him and ran to him with all her might to hug her brother, but suddenly, she pushed him away. The protagonist asked her in amazement, "What happened?" Melody screamed that he stunk. He was not her brother. Reed was surprised. What was she saying? He noted that no one approached him. Everyone avoided him. Garn came up to him and then, covering his nose with a handkerchief, asked him for forgiveness and told him that he really did smell bad. He should take a bath first. He really needed it now. The protagonist smiled in confusion and answered the servant that he would do just that. He cursed mentally, remembering Sandra and her words. After a while, he went out onto the balcony. Rubens was doing exercises for the knights. The protagonist noted that today the knights were doing the exercises that Rubens had shown them. They were doing great. Amazing, the captain said so. Rubens sang. He was still feeling sick. Exercises are a good thing. They will strengthen their health and serve as injury prevention. The protagonist thought that this no longer looked like the same exercises. He thought about his ally. Rubens is a promising and talented young knight. He is comparable in potential to Reed. The protagonist grabbed his sword and ran to train. That's why this guy was the first to realize the importance of exercising before training. The protagonist thought he didn't think it would reach this scale. His ally told him not to get distracted during training. Reed took a hit and fell. He laughed when he got up and told his trainer that he let his guard down. The knight told him that even in training, you can't relax. In a real fight, he would already be dead. But in his case, he thinks that it is already possible to train in dungeons. The protagonist exclaimed in surprise, "Are there dungeons here?" Rubens answered him that it is. A dungeon has appeared that needs to be cleared. The knights need to deal with it. The protagonist asked the guide to tell him more about it. His ally told him that a dungeon is considered a subtype of a living creature. In short, it is a place where dangerous monsters live. It is an excellent source of materials and a good place to level up characters. For a dungeon to appear, first, its core deep underground generates a huge amount of magical power for a long time. When the magical power accumulates above a certain level, an entrance to the dungeon appears. At the same time, monsters and treasures are born. In addition, monsters kill people who came for treasures. The killed become food for the dungeon. If the dungeon is left uncleaned, the monsters will go out into the outside world. That's why knights and adventurers clear dungeons. To destroy it, you need to go down to the very depths and destroy the core. Then the dungeon itself will collapse, burying everyone inside alive. That's why they often decide to simply damage the core. The damaged core goes underground again and accumulates magical power again. Knights regularly patrol the dungeons and check them. The protagonist noticed that it was somewhat reminiscent of an anthill. He asked the knight, "What is an adventurer's guild?" These words have always interested him. Rubens answered him, "Simply put, they are general workers. There are state and private ones. The Magnolia Empire Guild is governed by the state. The guild has its own system. It posts requests inside, and freelance adventurers take them. The more complex the request, the higher its rank and reward. In the territory of Bardia, knights were often engaged in the extermination of monsters. Most of the requests in the guild are related to collecting items. The local adventurers live a calm and leisurely life." In the end, Rubens added that he explained for a long time, but in detail. The protagonist dreamily said that he would also like to register in the guild someday. His ally noted that his swordsmanship was becoming more and more skillful every day. He would like to see his bright future. He would certainly succeed in conquering dungeons. The protagonist answered him that when this future comes, he hopes that Rubens will be married to Diana. The guy nervously exclaimed, "What is he saying?" He asked him not to mention it. Reed asked him why he was so unsure of himself. Diana would definitely reciprocate his feelings. Rubens objected, "No, that can't be." The protagonist asked him why. The guy answered, "Because he does not like to get up in the morning. Diana always comes to wake him up. But then she tells him not to think that she will wake him up forever. One day she will have a husband. That's how she says it." The protagonist opened his mouth in amazement. The night continued. And also, when she made him breakfast for work, she told him that she was practicing in case of marriage, not especially for him. And when her parents hint to her about marriage, Diana tells them that he is just her friend. Not in that sense. That's how she answers her parents. Rubens was silent for a second and added that he simply cannot like a girl like her. The protagonist noted, and also Diana is a real tsundere. The guy was amazed. What was he hearing now? Reed turned to him. He asked him if he and the girl have memories just for them. Rubens answered him that he did. He confessed to the protagonist when he was a child. He promised Diana that he would become a knight who would protect her. The protagonist thought, a promise from childhood friends? He looked sternly at his ally and told him that he had to go on a date with Diana. He absolutely had to go. Rubens wondered why he had suddenly decided to do such a thing. Reed answered him firmly. A knight should not hesitate. He knew the girl's character better than anyone, right? So let him think about the true meaning of her words. The guy thought about the true meaning. The protagonist noted satisfactorily. It seemed that a good thought had finally occurred to him. Rubens said that he understood everything. The protagonist noted that he couldn't have explained everything to him at all. At home, at the table, the protagonist remembered his conversation with his friend and laughed. How complicated everything was. Melody asked him in surprise why he was laughing. He answered her that it was just like that. He thought that it was better not to tell others about such things. Meanwhile, Diana was going to meet Rubens and remembered the places where they often played with him when they were little. Having met the guy, she asked him what he wanted. Rubens plucked up his courage and, as if confessing, blurted out to the girl about his feelings for her. As the protagonist later heard, they finally started dating. And he would like them to get married right away. The next morning, the protagonist was woken up by Melody, who shouted to him that it was already morning. The girl jumped on him and burst out laughing. He wished her good morning. He thought that recently his sister had been coming to him every morning to wake him up. And she did it too persistently. Before, he woke up before her. She was offended at him then. She wanted to wake him up herself. After breakfast, she returned to her room and sat down to study. She's preparing for a bright future, learning etiquette, languages, dancing, etc. Education for the gifted. The protagonist was sure that for her, the morning is a very valuable time when she can communicate with her beloved brother. She is only 4 years old now. That's why she is so active. Besides, in addition to Melody trying to crush him every morning, his father also returned that day. MC greeted him and Christy and congratulated them on their return. Christy came up to him and sadly said that she tried her best. Suddenly, the girl began to fall, and Danae caught her. The protagonist called out to her worriedly. Liner explained to him that Her Majesty enjoyed chatting with her. And then, on the road, Christy had no time to relax. The father added that the girl should sleep in the guest room for now, and he had something to talk to his son about. He invited Reed to the office. On the way there, the father complained to him that he was a bit tired this time in the capital. The protagonist noted that he still had a lot of work. When they settled down more comfortably for a conversation, Liner looked closely at his son. Finally, he asked him why he had suddenly changed so much. He was putting a lot of pressure on him, but he remained calm. He clearly doesn't do children's work. This includes gifts. There are no books in this mansion that contain such knowledge. Can he explain it to him? To be honest, MC didn't expect his father to corner him like this. He didn't even think that he could answer his question. But it was hard for him to continue deceiving his father. The protagonist thought that he would answer him honestly. Choosing his words carefully, he told his parent that, in fact, on the day he lost consciousness in the garden, he remembered his past life. The memories of his past life and Reed's memories were mixed. Thus, a new him was born. The basis of his personality was the memories of his past life, but Reed's memories and his feelings also carried weight. He felt guilty for what happened to his sister and the maids. And also, he respected his father. He wanted to be as strong as him. And also, he was in despair that he could not do anything to help his mother, who was dying. That's why he wants to protect his family and his mother. Liner was silent for a long time after his confession, lowering his head, and then he asked his son for forgiveness. Reed was confused and asked his father to raise his head. The Margrave continued. He just watched, and did not even guess about it. He thought that Reed was doing all this for himself. He did not know how much despair was in his heart. He did not know anything at all. He needed to spend time with him more often. He failed as a father. The protagonist objected to him, but he noticed the changes in him. Does he believe everything he told him? Liner confirmed that he did. That explains everything that happened to him. Or is there something else he has not told? Reed thought about telling him that this is a game world. How to explain to him what a game console is? It was impossible. Therefore, the protagonist spoke. It seems to him that in his past life he already knew about this world. His father asked him if he saw this in a dream. MC answered him that it was so. Using the knowledge he gained from his past life, he created a medicine without telling him. Liner asked him in surprise, "What medicine?" The protagonist answered that it was a medicine that restored magic power. The father snorted in disbelief and asked him again, "Restoring magic power?" Reed noted with all seriousness that it was. He brought the necessary materials, and Sandra made it. He also created a special spell that allowed him to measure the amount of magic power restored. He used moonflowers as materials. The Margrave was surprised. Moonflowers, a special spell? He thought of his son's teacher. He knew that her lessons would lead to results, but to this extent, it was already too much. Reed continued that with this medicine, he wants to start treating his mother, but it was only a temporary solution that would simply prolong her life, not cure her. Liner exclaimed, "What did he say? Did he know this from his knowledge of his past life? If he knew anything else, let him share it with him. He would help him." The protagonist promised him that everything would be so. At that moment, Garn appeared. The servant asked the head of the family, "Did he call him?" Liner asked him to join their conversation. Reed thought in surprise, "Something else?" The father turned to his son. He would like to talk to him about one more topic. He was silent for a moment, and then said that he had decided on his bride. The protagonist's amazement knew no bounds. Garn calmly asked, should he propose? The Margrave answered him that there was no need. Everything had already been decided. The protagonist, not believing his ears, asked his father when. He answered him, "In a couple of months." The protagonist was at a loss for words at that moment. Laner noted that he was also surprised. His Majesty had raised this issue very unexpectedly for him. Reed tried to object to him. He was still too young for marriage. His father firmly said that this time they would make an exception, because his bride would be the princess of the kingdom of Renalut. It would be a political marriage to strengthen the relations of their countries. The princess would live in the territory of Bardia. It seems that she is the same age as him. The protagonist thought sadly, the same age as him? They are still just children, and they are already getting married. The Margrave ordered the servant to prepare to meet the princess in their mansion. Garn asked him if he could note something. After the headmaster gave him permission, the servant said that the mansion was too small to accommodate a princess from another country. Their countries had completely different cultures. Perhaps it would be better to build her a completely new building. Liner thoughtfully noted that he was right. Let him prepare the plans. Would he be able to gather the necessary information in a few days? The government would pay his expenses, he was sure of it. Garn bowed to his master and briefly answered him as he wished. When the servant left, the protagonist turned to his father. He told him that they were the Margrave's family. Why should a princess from another kingdom marry him? They were much lower in status than her. His father answered him that everything was simple. The kingdom of Renalut is a country ruled by dark elves. It is located on the border with their territory. This kingdom also borders the kingdom of Barst and the Magnolia Empire, where humans rule. One day, an incident occurred between the kingdoms of Renalut and Barst, which was called the Barst Incident. The people of this kingdom hunted dark elves to make slaves out of them, which led to the deterioration of relations between the countries, and the situation became extremely unstable. Renalut found themselves in a difficult situation because the export of salts from the kingdom of Barst was suspended due to the interrupted trade. Then, Renalut asked the Magnolia Empire for help. The empire set them a condition. In exchange for help, they would have to become a vassal state. Barst decided to ban the slave trade of dark elves because they thought that they could not handle both countries at once. All the dark elf slaves were released and returned home. And so, they proposed a political marriage to strengthen their alliance with the imperial family, or equivalent aristocracy, like that. The father continued that the emperor has a son, but if the princess becomes the wife of the emperor's son, it can lead to undesirable results. If the aristocrats oppose this marriage, the emperor risks causing internal conflict between the factions, and Renalut can gain the right to the throne. The protagonist noted what a complex political topic. That is why their remote Margraviate was the perfect choice to send the princess away. The father told him that he understood everything correctly. His son is the son of the imperial aristocracy. There is no right to refuse. Although he even complained to the emperor, the protagonist realized that he felt sorry for the princess. Due to the status of a vassal country, she will have to marry the son of a Margrave of another country. Laner noted that if he thinks so, then let him become a husband for her who values her more than anything in the world. Will he be able to make the princess happy, who was betrayed by fate? Everything is in his hands. The father repeated to him, let him protect her as his princess. Did he understand that? Reed answered him that he understood everything. He asked what the princess's name was. Liner answered him that it was the first princess of Renalut, Farah Renalut. The protagonist thought about it, his future wife Farah. Then, he told his father that he wanted to take part in the design of the extension. Therefore, He asked him to allow him to visit the kingdom of his future wife, at least for a short period. He could not really explain it to his father, but it was also connected with his memories from his past life and could help in treating his mother. Liner thought about it, and then said that he allowed him to visit the kingdom, but only for a couple of days. He added that there was still enough time before the announcement of the marriage. He would inform this kingdom that he would go there unofficially. The protagonist walked down the corridor with very sad thoughts. At the age of 6, he would already be married. At that moment, Garn called out to him. The servant told the protagonist that he was sure that he would be able to make the princess happy, and that this would have a positive effect on the relations between the two countries, and she would become a worthy young wife for him. MC was forced to laugh and thanked the faithful Garn. He felt better after his words. But, as Garn knows, he is also still a child, so he did not think that the term young wife would suit him. Garn smiled and asked him for forgiveness for his mistake. Reed laughed again and told him that there was nothing wrong with that. The next day, he approached Christie's room, knocked on the door, and asked her if she was there. There was silence in response. He thought, maybe she was sleeping? The protagonist opened the door slightly and looked into the room. He called her name again, but she did not answer him. He was overcome with curiosity. What was the matter? Approaching the bed, the protagonist saw that she was really sleeping. He thought she was very tired. At that moment, the girl started talking in her sleep. She mumbled something negative and mentioned the Empress. MC wondered what she was dreaming about. He didn't need to come in here. He decided to go out, but he couldn't open the handle. Reed wondered. It wouldn't open? Or maybe someone was standing behind the door? He pulled the handle harder. The door opened a little, and his sister's face appeared in the crack. She told him that she wouldn't let him out. Doesn't he know that you can't enter a girl's room without permission? The protagonist calmed her down. He just decided to check her condition. Could she open the door now? His sister asked him doubtfully. Was it true? The protagonist begged. Could she please let him out already? The girl doubted. He begged her to decide quickly before Christie woke up. At that moment, Christie asked him for forgiveness. She was tired, so she fell asleep. She herself did not expect it. The protagonist reassured her that everything was fine. He thought how good it was that he had not been caught. Reed continued that he wanted to apologize to her for what had happened in the capital. What had happened there? His father had kept him in the dark. The girl wanted to talk to him about it herself. She told him about what had happened during their visit to the capital, about the business with Count Laurent, about how she had also been kept in the dark, and about the business negotiations with His Majesty. And not only about that, she also told him about how the Count had treated her rudely, not knowing that she was of noble birth. The Emperor had offered to punish him, but the girl had refused. The Count was then completely confused. The Emperor asked her if she wanted something else. The girl really wanted to tell him something. Erwin told her that he was listening to her. Christie said, addressing the nobility as well, that this was a request to everyone. From now on, she wants them to stop believing rumors and base their opinions on evidence. If they, the glorious nobles of the Magnolia Empire, continue like this, their country will be despised in the diplomatic arena. They should use this opportunity to reflect on this and correct their mistakes. Count Laurent then turned blue with anger. The Emperor supported her. He felt sorry for their aristocracy being so uneducated. He turned to the girl and expressed his hope that she would forgive them. The girl summarized that this was not only Laurent's problem, but the entire aristocracy. They were all really reprimanded. Perhaps she went a little overboard, but it was worth it. The protagonist thought in surprise. Everything turned out to be much more surprising than he thought. Reed muttered that she was a great woman. Christie asked him what he said. The protagonist answered her that he had not said anything. She had misheard. He asked, so they could only wait and watch Laurent? She answered him that it was so, but those who were in the Count's faction had already lost their positions. They would have no influence for some time. The girl exclaimed, Laurent's faction. It was simply necessary to defeat this enemy if they wanted to expand their trade. He did not get his title of Count for nothing. He worked well with the Magnolia Empire Chamber of Commerce, worked behind the scenes. He was the one who did not allow the chambers of commerce of other countries to gain influence. The protagonist, listening to her emotional speech, thought that he would not want her to be his enemy. He told her that he was glad that the negotiations were successful, and he was also pleased with the fact that her company moved to their territory. He thanked her for everything. Christie looked at him in surprise and noted that it was a great honor for her to hear such a thing from him. She was also very lucky to have met him. She was not recognized. No matter how hard she tried, her efforts did not bear fruit. Count Laurent called her a stubborn horse. This is because of how her trading company was formed. She was born into an elven trading company, and she had an older brother. It was decided that he, as the eldest son, would inherit the company from his father. But Christie's business acumen was much stronger than her brother's. The girl thought that she would support her brother from behind the scenes, until people began to say that, With her track record, she should have been the one to inherit the company. Fearing that their business would fall apart due to internal disputes, she decided to become independent. She wanted to establish a new trading company in the territory of Bardia. This way, the spheres of influence of her family's company would not overlap with the new brainchild. Even if a person is very talented, starting from scratch in an unfamiliar land is extremely difficult. There were days when she could not achieve any results. Emma supported her as best she could. But suddenly, something changed. She meant that very letter. Reed drawled thoughtfully, "She speaks correctly." Sometimes, even talent cannot bring results if a person is unlucky. Christy continued that. Nevertheless, she fought, tried desperately. Luck comes only to those who work hard and try. The protagonist told her, his butler told him about her company. What he learned about her was due to her efforts. He did not know if these words would find a response in the girl's heart, but he did not want to hear how she tried to belittle her merits. He smiled and noted that she had achieved a lot. Where was her self-confidence? Christy was embarrassed. What was he talking about? It was not like that at all. But she really worked hard. Sometimes it was incredibly difficult for her. Perhaps she always wanted someone to recognize her, and she was so glad that this day had come. The girl folded her hands in a prayer gesture and thanked the protagonist for everything. Then she apologized to him. She thought she had lost her head. The protagonist assured her that everything was fine. Now Her Majesty would work with her? Christy perked up and confirmed that it was so. She told him the Empress's conditions. The first point was that a month's supply was to be prepared. The second point was that sales at the market would begin after receiving the month's supply. The third condition was not to extend to additional orders, and the fourth point was full prepayment. The protagonist noted, yes, such are the conditions. The aloe cultivation had just begun. He could ask his father to find fertilizer. Christy laughed and told him that she had already taken measures in advance. Christy used the connections of the saffron company and signed a contract with an aloe farmer. In addition, she sent orders for aloe to the Adventurers Guild. She thinks frighteningly fast. The market value of aloe will soon rise and he will buy it all right now, but Her Majesty the Empress will have her hands full for some time. By the way, Christy is very good at advertising. She even won over the Empress to her side. After all, there are few people in this world as beautiful as she is, and she can win anyone to her side. Christy said that he should be more careful with his words. Reed was surprised and asked, "Did she think so?" "She can become as beautiful as Chris if she uses their products. It's a great slogan and everyone will admire her." Christy awkwardly said that she understood it. According to the protagonist, they continued the discussion and he managed to persuade her to name the products Christy Lotion and Christy Emma Hair Dye. She said in bewilderment that she did not think that she would use her name. Reed noted that paint can be made not only from olive oils, but also from essential oils. Christy asked in surprise, "Is this true?" Lotion is also a great product and you can change these ingredients. Try adding fragrances to check the effectiveness of selling different smells. The protagonist thought, is she not going to stop at not only these products? They will develop. Reed asked her to remain optimistic, and she said that now they can do business directly with Her Majesty. He can also contact her through her if necessary. Reed thought that Empress Matilda was dangerous. He smiled and said that she even talks about Her Majesty in her sleep. If there is no need, then he would prefer not to get close to her. Christy looked at him in bewilderment and asked how he knows about what she says. Reed noted that he heard when she was sleeping. Furious, Christy shouted that looking at a sleeping girl's face was the height of perversion. Melody asked what she had misunderstood. Reed awkwardly called out to her. After a while, Nanali sat on the bed and looked at her palm, which was covered in blood, and thought, her heartbeat is so fast, even if she concentrates on the sounds of dripping water. Nanali clenched her teeth and resolutely said that she will not give up, and asked to look at her. She will definitely get up on her own feet. She coughed heavily and whispered to herself that everything is fine, she just needs to pull herself together. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and she allowed them to enter. Reed, Liner, and Sandra appeared on the threshold. Nanali apologized to them for being in such a state and introduced herself. Reed thought it was amazing how she looked so noble in such a state. Sandra introduced herself and said that she was engaged in magical research. Liner called out to Nanali and said that the thing was that until now he had kept the name of the disease from her. He couldn't tell her because he was a coward. The thing that was keeping her from living a normal life was a fatal and incurable disease, a disorder of exhaustion of magical power. Nanali smiled and noted that she knew, and he asked in surprise, who told her? She answered that no one, and asked him not to make such a frightening face. She herself guessed about her condition. Even if she didn't know the name of the disease, she still guessed what exactly was wrong with her. But now, she at least knew the name, because she didn't like being sick. Reed shed tears and thought that his mother had long ago accepted that she was sick. Nanali called out to him and asked for forgiveness. Because of her, he would now have such difficult memories. He clenched his hand into a fist and thought that she assumed that she had a serious disease, but she didn't think that it was incurable. Nanali exhaled and said that she was a useless mother, since she made her son worry. Reed shouted that if she was a useless mother, then his father was also useless. Liner asked in surprise, "What?" The protagonist puffed out his cheek and asked displeasedly, "Didn't he just call himself a bad father?" He would just repeat after him. Liner asked him not to talk about it, and he asked why he was so secretive, and what was wrong. They were a family after all, and Melody always called her by her full name. Nanali watched them in surprise, and Liner ordered the protagonist to stop and asked, "Did he think about his mother?" Reed asked displeasedly, "What did he think? How hard was it for her to go through all this alone?" He knew that she was terminally ill, so he just looked away and ran completely into work, leaving her alone. Liner ran up to Nanali and grabbed her hands and said that he had made a huge mistake. Nanali asked him not to worry. She knew very well that he had other things to worry about. They exchanged words of mutual love and hugged each other. Reed and Sandra looked at each other, and she asked them to get down to business. Sandra took out a box and asked the lady to take this medicine that restores magic power. It will not cure her completely, but it can at least ease the symptoms. It does not taste very good, so it is better to drink it right away. Nanali swallowed the pill and said with disgust that it does not taste very good. The protagonist looked at her questioningly and asked if she was okay. Nanali smiled and said that she was fine, when suddenly she began to cough heavily and choke. Reed worriedly thought that this was bad, she was going to die. He used the measurement of magic power, and the system board showed that her remaining magic power was 8. The protagonist called out to Sandra and exclaimed that she only had 8 magic power left, and she needed the medicine. Sandra handed Nanali the medicine and asked her to open her mouth. She began to breathe heavily, and Reed called out to her worriedly and asked her not to give up. Nanali looked at him with a heavy look, and the protagonist began to cry and call her and ask her not to leave him. Liner approached her and kissed her, remembering how he met Nanali. When he was Erwin's assistant, he worked in the capital and even disguised himself. Liner approached Erwin and asked that this was just a census, and did he need to go out into the city for this? Erwin said that he just wanted to walk around the city, and there were 2 reasons. He wanted to see the city and buy a gift for his wife. Liner asked discontentedly, could he ask a servant for such a thing, or could he ask him? Couldn't he? Erwin smiled and said that it was very important that he choose. Liner noted that he could never be stopped. He said that it was because his father was not feeling well, and it had become quite difficult for him to deal with state affairs. Liner asked if it was that bad. Erwin said that in a couple of years he would have to inherit his business, and he would hardly be able to go to the city then. That's why he wanted to see the landscapes that he would have to protect. Liner called out to him and asked him not to worry, that it was his problem alone. Erwin smiled and thanked him for going to the city with him today. Suddenly they heard someone screaming, and Liner asked if he could go there. Erwin agreed and asked him not to overdo it. He asked Dinas to stay with Erwin and ran away. Meanwhile, a crowd of people stood around the corner, and the man pressed Nanali against the wall. He didn't think he would see her in such a place. He smirked and asked, "So are they going to continue the conversation?" Nanali exclaimed with displeasure that he had already received an official refusal, and they had nothing to continue. She did not want to talk to a man who had a huge and inflated ego. They looked at her rather slyly, and there was horror in her eyes. The man grinned and said that he liked the expression on her face. Now the carriage would come, and for every moment she made him feel awkward, he would make her pay. He grabbed her face and she began to call for help. Lane appeared, haughty them and asked, "And what are they doing here?" The man turned to him and said that he and she were lovers and were meeting here. Lane asked her to hint to him if they were disturbing her. Nanali exclaimed that none of them were her lovers. Lane said that he understood her, and after a while scattered the whole crowd of people. He shook his hands and said that he had no desire to even talk to them. Logus ran away and exclaimed discontentedly that he was from the family of Count Galliano and would remember it. Lane asked, "Is the lady hurt?" Nanali awkwardly thanked him and said that she screamed, but no one came. Nanali clung to him and he noticed, smiling, that she was holding up well. Dinas called out to him and asked if he was okay. Liner ordered him not to shout his name across the street. They were actually here secretly. Had he forgotten? Nanali looked at him warmly and thought, what a wonderful man. A couple of months later, Liner asked if he was being offered marriage. Erwin agreed. Even his parents were not against it. He exclaimed, "It can't be." He was hearing about it for the first time. Erwin handed him an envelope and noticed that their approval was right there. He could read it. Liner opened the letter and awkwardly scratched the back of his head and said that it was definitely written by his father's hand. Erwin said that his bride was the Crimson Lady, Nanali. She had previously refused all suitors, and they said that she was insanely beautiful. Liner exhaled heavily and said, but he had never seen her before. After a while, he saw her and said in surprise, So it was her. Nanali noted that he remembered her. She thought that they would never meet again. Liner thought that he had not paid attention then, but she really was very beautiful. He said that now he understood why she was nicknamed the Crimson Lady. Nanali asked in confusion, what did he mean? He smiled and said that she had very beautiful red hair, and in general, she was a very beautiful lady. Nanali was surprised and asking for forgiveness, said that she got this nickname when she was proposed to marriage. They began to consider her a girl with a difficult character, since she is so unapproachable that no one even has a chance. Liner awkwardly said, that's how, and he thought in a different sense. Nanali happily said that she liked it very much. What a wonderful meaning he put into her nickname. She even likes it very much now. Liner called out to her and said that he liked her very much, and he would like her to become his wife and move to Bardia with him. She put her hand on her chest and happily said that if he does not mind her, then she will be glad. Nanali swallowed the pill, and Sandra thought that the lady drank the medicine. She asked Reed, how much magic power? The protagonist used the measurement of magic power and began to mentally beg, when suddenly the system showed that the remaining magic power was 101. Sandra and Reed were surprised and he happily exclaimed, it worked. Liner called out to Nanali, and she opened her eyes, smiled and said that she was fine. Reed burst into tears right by her bed, and after that, a doctor examined his mother. He reassured them that another attack was not to be expected, and after a joint discussion, they decided that she needed to take the medicine 3 times a day. Just in case, they placed maids to keep an eye on her. The protagonist rubbed his eyes and said contentedly, simply an amazing medicine, restored 100 magic power at once. Sandra said that it was thanks to Mr. Liner. Then Mrs. Nanali could not open her mouth to drink the medicine, and it worked quickly. He took water and the medicine into his mouth and then did mouth to mouth. Reed thought his dad was amazing because he figured things out so quickly. He called out to Sandra and asked if she had time and did not want to spend time with her family. She said that she wanted to give them time alone now. Meanwhile, in the castle, Elias asked His Majesty, did he read the letter? It seems to him that their country is not respected at all. Marriage with a royal family or equal aristocracy. The empire clearly doesn't value them, and they didn't listen to their demands, deciding everything for them. Norris muttered, the marriage will be with some son of the Margrave, and they are also the same age. Everything has already been decided. They can no longer influence this marriage, and they can't afford to say that they don't like the future husband. But if there are any problems on their part, Norris smiled contentedly and said that they need to at least check whether this son of the Margrave has a worthy talent. He will decide this issue. Elias asked what he had in mind. Norris thoughtfully asked if he could say what he thought about this idea. Meanwhile, Sandra grinned and said he understood that they needed time alone. She looks at him and it seems like an adult is hiding behind a child's body. Reed smiled and asked, she understands that this cannot be? By the way, he wanted to consult. When he creates a new spell, he wants her to be nearby. Sandra asked in surprise, what this time? Reed opened the door with a key and said that next, he wants to create a spell to remember. In his past life, someone told him that if something gets into his brain even once, he will never forget it. Everything is stored somewhere in the depths of the brain. But he was reborn, and he has memories from his past life. In other words, not only the brain has memory, but also the soul. Reed asked, so there is a way to see the memories of the soul, right? Sandra noted that this is similar to the theory of the living soul. He asked, the theory of the living soul? She said that this is one of the theories in the science of magic. Life force is the source of magical power and shows the way to the gods. The basis of the theory is roughly similar to his thoughts. Reed thought, is this one of the philosophies of this world? But I wonder if it will help him? Sandra said that this theory believes that the life force is the source of magical power and shows the way to divinity. In other words, as he said, it is the soul. Reed put his hand on his chest and asked, so it is possible to influence magical power by changing the soul? Sandra noted that even if they try it, no one can say what will happen. If the source of magical power is the soul or life force, then you need to concentrate on something deep in your body. The protagonist opened his eyes and thought that he did not feel any changes, but he must continue. Magic power can be reduced to life force. Where will the life force go after that? Sandra asked him to feel and sense this flow. Reed suddenly noticed how the magical power was stretching somewhere and thought, is this a hole? A flickering light flashed in front of him, and he said that it could be dangerous. Suddenly, he fell into a room with bookshelves and asked in surprise, where did he end up? He had bookshelves in front of his eyes? Suddenly another Reed appeared in front of him and greeted him. The protagonist asked in surprise who he was. He answered that he should call his memory. This is the most suitable name. He is the embodiment of his memory. After all, he came to dig into memories from a past life. The protagonist agreed and thought, that is, he will just cooperate with him like that? He can just pull out memories himself. It's like digging into the network. Can he handle it? Memory said that it is not difficult to imagine, but the main thing is not to lose concentration. Ordinary people cannot get here, but he is special, and next time it is better to directly contact him. He will find the necessary information in this world. Reed asked, what should he call him? Memory said that he should just use magic power and listen to his advice. This time, although he was able to get here, this place is very fragile. He asked him not to come here anymore, and if necessary, he can just call him by name. Reed thanked him and closed his eyes. After a while, he opened it, and Sandra appeared in front of him, who was trying to call out to him. The protagonist got scared and flew away asking, "What is she doing?" She exclaimed worriedly, "It was not her you should ask." He froze and sat in dead silence. As soon as she approached, he screamed. The protagonist apologized for making her worry, and she asked if his body was okay. He hadn't moved for quite a while. Reed looked at his hands and thought that the last thing the memory told him was that he should not come back. This world is fragile, and he could be stuck in it forever. Should he tell Sandra about this? The protagonist apologized. Nothing came of it. Sandra apologized in return for not being able to help in any way. Meanwhile, Reed was sitting on the bed when suddenly the name Memory escaped his lips. It greeted him and asked if he was back. The protagonist was surprised and said that he really heard him. Memory asked, so he did not believe him? Well, what should he find? Reed said that he just wanted to check. Nothing was needed today. Memory told him to call it when he needed something. In the morning, the protagonist decided to visit Nanali and entered the room and asked how she was feeling. She happily noted that she felt better than before, thanks to the medicine. Sandra smiled and said that they were still thinking about the dosage, but there were no problems. Reed awkwardly looked at them and thought that they were like two cats. Sandra called out to him and asked if he thought of something offensive to them. He awkwardly brushed off the question. According to him, since the day his mother almost died from an attack, Sandra became her attending physician. She had always been involved in research into magical power, so she was the most suitable person. He also taught her how to measure magical power. He must complete the medicine that cures her as soon as possible, and if he achieves this, he will be able to cure not only his mother, but also others who suffer from this ailment. Nanali called out to the protagonist and asked why he was so tense. He replied that he was just thinking and asked her not to overexert himself. Sandra asked if it was time for him to go to Mr. Liner. Reed exclaimed as if he had called him, then he went. Nanali smiled and asked him to say hello. Meanwhile, in his office, Liner said that they had decided on the date of the trip, and the protagonist was surprised. He thought that he was going to Renaloot also for the sake of treating his mother. To create the medicine, a lot of moon grass is needed, but they were unable to start growing it on their territory, since it does not take root. Therefore, he will have to go to Renaloot, a country with developed agriculture. Maybe he can find a solution there, and from his memories of the past he realized that he can definitely find information about medicinal herbs there. Liner said that he can't let his guard down there. Something is clearly brewing inside the country. Reed wondered what his father meant. He said that King Elias is trying to promote the idea that their countries are friends, but not all aristocrats share his point of view. The protagonist asks suspiciously, and they will try to do something? The Liner replied, there is a possibility that they want to remove him from the marriage. The protagonist thought, so there will be aristocrats who think that he is not a suitable husband for her. He understands that the local aristocrats are unhappy with their vassal status and want independence for their country. But if this goes too far, it can be dangerous. Reed asked in surprise, how did he know about this? He said that there are no impregnable walls. Information can be obtained from any country, and information is what is needed to protect your home. The protagonist was surprised and thought, does he have spies in Renaloot? Liner said that it was a good guess, but he would not say it directly. Reed smiled awkwardly and said that it was better to live in ignorance. Meanwhile, Elias called out to Norris and said that he understood his point of view, but the father of her future husband was Liner. He was called the strongest man in the Magnolia Empire. In addition, she would be located almost on the border with their country. Does not he think that these are excellent conditions? Norris noted that his words made sense, but they wanted to achieve marriage with the imperial family. They would not be satisfied with some kind of backup plan. The assistant exclaimed that he was right. Elias thought that Norris had always been like this. He was especially proud of being a dark elf, so a whole faction of patriots formed around him. Through marriage, he planned for their country to take root in the depths of the empire. First of all, Renaloot ceased to be a vassal, and then they completely gained control of the empire. But for this, he is ready even to go to an internal political conflict, or even to a war with another country. Races came into his office and he asked what he needed. He said that he was about Farah. Is he really planning to send her as a hostage and force her to marry? Elias asked who told him such nonsense. Races said with displeasure that no one told him this, because Farah is only 6 years old, and she cannot be sent to another country. She is still a child. Is it really so necessary? Elias said that their connection with this country is very important, and when he becomes king, he will be able to accept his decision. Raisis exclaimed with displeasure. He cannot accept this. Elias tensed up and thought that he was still too young, that is why he was so emotional. He told him to go to his room and cool down. He should not have brought up this topic. Raisis walked along the corridor, when suddenly he met Farah, and she wished him good morning. Raisis said that she rarely comes here. Farah asked that her mother called her, so she is here, and why is he here? He answered that he spoke with his father and lost his head, that his father was angry. She noted that she did not even believe that her father could be angry. Raisis looked at her and thought that she was very beautiful and looked like her mother. Despite her young age, she received a good education and her every movement was elegant and polished. A younger sister, of whom he was proud. The servant leaned towards her and said that it was time for her to go. Farah bowed and said that she would go. Raisis thought that he was only once again convinced that this was wrong, and he would not accept it. He must protect his sister. Memory grabbed his head and asked what kind of memories were these. Reed asked, well, how? Memory is a special magic that he recently invented to dig into memories. When he mentally accesses memory, it helps him find the information he needs. While he talks to the memory, the magic power is gradually spent. It's like paying for a cell phone. But why did he anger the memory? Was he able to find out anything about the plot? He asked the memory, does it even understand what it wants from it? It was constantly skipping dialogues. Even if he digs into its memories, all he will get are scraps of information, and there is nothing useful there. The main character said that he did not really delve into the plot, because the game was still free and he was interested in other things. He read the main plot, just skipping, so he remembered little of it. This is why he needed the help of memory, because this is an otome game based on the Cinderella universe. The love interests were princes of different countries. In Renalut, there should have been one. I think his name was Raisis, and he seemed to be very useful. Reed awkwardly asked, is it hard after all? Then he would like to take this opportunity to learn more about his memory in principle. Is it possible? Memory said that he also wanted to tell videos that he watched on the internet, the contents of textbooks from school days. It is possible to pull out, or it will take a long time, or it is impossible at all. He can only pull out what he saw or heard in a past life. Complaints of colleagues that he listened to with one ear, uninteresting advertising and conversations of random people. It is somewhat reminiscent of restoring a document torn to shreds. Of course, he can try, but what should he do? Reed asked, can he ask him about it? He unexpectedly repeated his words. Meanwhile, Rubens exclaimed that the gentleman should carefully watch his movements. Reed fell to the ground and, breathing heavily, said that he was done. Rubens smiled and noted that it seemed like the time had come to learn how to strengthen his body with magic. The protagonist asked in surprise, strengthen with magic? He said that the conversion of magical power is what strengthens combat skills. Everything is simple. Only without sensible combat skills, this will be of little use. Reed thoughtfully asked, should he just imagine a stronger body? Rubens said that it would not be possible to simply remove the magic from the body. He should feel how the magical power spreads evenly throughout his body, strengthening his muscles. He should learn to do it unconsciously. They often tell knights to feel and not to think, like muscles instead of brains. He will stop running out of breath so quickly as soon as he learns this trick. Rubens smiled and asked, did he use this in duels with him too? That is why Reed never runs out of breath during long training sessions. Inexhaustible endurance, and he was constantly tired. He did not even have a chance to win, it was unfair. The main character grinned and asked, as soon as he learns to use body enhancement, he will defeat him. Did he understand? Rubens exclaimed that he accepts the challenge. He happily jumped up and said that first he will learn to distribute magical power throughout the body, and they will go to the obstacle course. After a while, Reed looked at his hands in surprise and asked if he was getting tired less. Maybe it's because he trains with Sandra? Rubens said that mage warriors were amazing. If he had the same abilities, he would have been a real genius by the age of 10. It was amazing that he could handle his training without strengthening his body. So, they move on to the next stage. Without trying his hardest, but he shouldn't get tired. According to Reed, he runs while the magic power flows through his body, and then does exercises without interrupting the magic power, and when he mastered the technique, it was time for a duel with Rubens. The main character waved his sword in front of him and exclaimed that this time, everything will be different. Rubens smiled and said that he was happy too early. He won't lose to him yet. Reed thought that after strengthening his body, the training became noticeably more fun. He became much less tired after training and experience height, weight. There is still a difference between them, but he can win. But not in a fair fight. He feels like the will to win was born in his heart, and there is still a chance. He should take advantage of the fact that he is a child, and if he can dodge one attack. Suddenly, He found himself in Ruben's hands, and he said with a smile that the idea was good, but the execution was not so. Reed sadly said that he lost. Rubens let him go and said that he was surprised that he did not give up after they clashed swords. His technique should be used against less experienced fighters. The protagonist asked to fight again, but he said that unfortunately, they would be done with him for today. Reed looked at him questioningly. Rubens grinned and noted that he needed a special teacher, since they were too used to each other. The protagonist thought in bewilderment. Does this mean that this is only the beginning? It is hard for him to believe it, considering how difficult the training was. Liner apologized for the delay. He had to finish the job. Are they done yet? Reed was surprised by him, and he said that he wanted to see his abilities in person. He was not going to hold back, so he had to fight at full strength. The protagonist looked at him in bewilderment and thought, his first battle with someone other than Rubens will be with his father. But how strong is his father? How much stronger is he than him? He wants to find out. Reed swung his sword and rushed to attack, but Liner blocked his blow and asked, at such an age he has so much strength, has he mastered the enhancement? Suddenly the protagonist was exhausted, and Liner happily asked, what's the matter? Is this the end already? Then he will go on the attack. He began to attack Reed, and he could barely block the blows from powerlessness. He knocked the sword out of his hands and asked, is he going to continue the fight without a sword? Reed fell to his knees and felt tired. With Rubens he could fight much longer. Liner approached him and said he would like to know how strong his courage is. The protagonist asked in surprise, courage? The strength of spirit that does not falter? You can say so, it depends on understanding. In a real fight he will experience it, because courage determines whether he will die or survive. Therefore he wants to test it. Rubens gave Liner a sharp iron sword and after examining it said that the blade is in good condition. Reed asked fearfully why he needed this saber. Liner chuckled and asked him to consider this training. Liner asked him to listen to him carefully. He should stand straight and still, not look away and watch his movements. He went to attack him and Reed thought, what is this feeling of intimidation? Suddenly Liner drew his sword near the protagonist's face and he fell to the ground in fear. He said displeasedly, it seems that here he corresponds to his age. Liner ordered him to stand up and asked why he closed his eyes. He told him not to look away. Reed apologized. This was the first time he felt killing intent and he was afraid of a real sword. He felt as if his father was really going to kill him. Even though he knew that he would not do it, he felt fear of a real sword. Liner said, it's okay, everyone is like that at first. The fear he felt is something he will have to overcome in a real fight to gain courage. Without courage, he will always be overcome by fear, which means that only death awaits him. But without fear, he cannot live either. Without it, he will be too reckless and he must get used to it and control it. He came to teach him this. He does not mind, right? Reed confidently asked him to teach him. Rubens noted that the master's teaching method is special. He will not be able to help him in any way and wished him good luck. Liner put me in front of him and said that now he will swing the sword again and asked him not to close his eyes and carefully watch his movements. He swung the sword again and the protagonist was scared thinking that he was about to hit. But this is a necessary measure to increase survivability in battle. Liner swung the sword in front of his face over and over again and ordered him to watch the sword and not to close his eyes. You need to carefully watch the trajectory of your father's sword. Unexpectedly, on the last swing of the sword, Reed stood with his eyes open and Liner noticed that he had already begun to get used to it, and now the next step. He called out to Rubens and the protagonist thought that this was not all. Liner drew a line on the ground and asked the protagonist to go beyond the line and get to Rubens, and he would attack all this time. It would not be a problem for him if he carefully watched his movements, right? Reed confidently said that he understood everything and he had no choice. Rubens wished him luck and the protagonist rushed forward, dodging his father's attacks. Unexpectedly, Liner swung his sword in front of him and he thought that he was fast. But thanks to the first lesson, his eyes got used to it. He had a chance to win. The main thing is to watch the sword. Reed happily jumped to Rubens and he was sincerely happy for him. He thought that his father's fencing was merciless. Until that moment he had only trained with wooden swords. Liner said that that was all for today and he would try to participate in all his training and they would do this training every time. The protagonist asked in surprise, every time? Rubens smiled and said he would hardly say, but in fact he was very happy. He had wanted to train with him for a long time. Reed sadly thought that his father, as always, did not know how to show it. Melody called out to the protagonist and running up to him, he asked what was the matter. Suddenly, she began to scream in fear that her father was mocking her brother. Liner was surprised and Denai apologized. The lady really wanted to see Mr. Reed. But since they were busy training, she could only watch from the sidelines. Melody grabbed his hand and called her brother. So the training was over. The protagonist called out to her and said that his father did this on purpose to train him and asked her not to tell him that anymore. She asked, "Is it true?" A little later, Liner was sitting in his office and desperately said that Meldy hated him. She opened the door a little and called out to him, saying that she wanted to say that she didn't hate him and apologized. She shouted that she had said everything, and Danae praised her. Meldy took Reed's hand and asked her brother to come back quickly, and then hugged him tightly. The protagonist exclaimed that he was leaving everything here for her. He whispered to her, and she came up to Liner, hugging his leg. Meldy asked him to come back quickly too. Liner picked her up and asked, "Really? They will return as soon as possible." Meldy smiled and exclaimed, "That's a promise." Sandra pointed out that they could leave Mistress Nanalie to her, but he should be careful with magic. The protagonist replied that he knew, and finally getting ready, Rubens exclaimed that they were moving out and heading forward to Renalut. While the protagonist was riding in a carriage to Renalut, two monsters met in the evil forest to the east. The snake spat poison out of its mouth, and the slime thought that it didn't expect to see a green snake here and was caught off guard. It doesn't want to be eaten, and it doesn't want to die. The snake lunged at him to attack, but the black cat deftly scratched it with its claws, killing the monster. The black cat puffed up at the slime with displeasure and walked up to the snake and started eating the flesh. The slime thought that it was amazing. What a cool black cat. It turned around and thought, why is there only one slime here? In this forest where there are many monsters, they are the most numerous and are at the very bottom of the food chain. Slime usually accumulates magic power in itself and then breaks it down to reproduce. But this slime has too much magic power inside, and for some reason it doesn't break it down. Because of the accumulated magic power, something like emotions were born in this slime. Slime, seeing huge monsters, hid behind the bushes in fear. She lives as a victim in eternal fear of those who are stronger, so she decided to separate from the rest. Slime thought that if she remained in sight with everyone, she would be eaten, so she needed to hide. While she was hiding and living a quiet life, the slime's natural enemy, a green snake, found her. The black cat irritably asked why she was following him. He went under a tree and looked at the slime, allowing it to enter. He thought that if he just threw her, she would be eaten right away, and then he would not be able to sleep. So let her live. If there is a shortage of water, she will drink it. After some time, the black cat returned with prey and looked around in surprise. He asked, "Is everything clean here? Did she try?" Slime absorbed the remains of food and bones and began to jump happily. He pushed the food towards her and asked her to eat. This was gratitude for cleaning, and he did not bring this meat for her on purpose. The slime started eating, and after that the black cat allowed her to stay here, but to clean. Does she understand his speech? Black cats are bad at cleaning, and from that day on he went hunting and the slime cleaned. So they lived, not speaking the same language but understanding each other. Meanwhile, the slime crawled up to the black cat and started calling him, asking him to wake up because it was time to hunt. He woke up and said that he would go when he was hungry. The black cat asked in surprise, was that her voice just now? The slime asked if he could hear her voice. He said that he had never heard that a slime could use magic. She was not a simple slime. Was it magic? The slime asked if it was true, but she was happy because she had wanted to talk to him all this time. The black cat replied that this was the reason, because he thought that it was because of his strong desire that she received this ability. Slime imagined a white cat and asked, well, maybe someday she would be able to take on an appearance similar to his? The black cat answered happily that it would be great and would become his sweet wife. Slime asked in surprise, really? She would pray every day. Slime and the black cat continued to live together and got along well. Slime said that she wanted to show him something. She asked him to watch and suddenly began to turn into a white cat. The black cat looked at her in surprise and she asked, well, how? She did not manage to make black fur, only white. He exclaimed in confusion. That is, she is very sweet. The white cat happily asked, does he remember the promise he gave her? He awkwardly stretched out the promise to become his wife. She asked upset, he does not remember? The black cat exclaimed that he remembered. He thought, what is it about her race or appearance that attracts him so much? The slime learned magic to take on a form similar to his. She tried so hard for him. The black cat called out to her and asked if she would become his wife. They would be together for life. The white cat asked hesitantly if he would mind. She was certainly happy, but she was a slime. Was he really sure? The black cat smiled and said that he would not repeat himself twice and that he was always responsible for his words. So she could agree. She burst into tears and exclaimed that she loved him. And so, in the forest of evil, the strange love of the slime and the black cat was born. In the end, they will meet a human child who will feel a strange power, but that is another story. According to Reed's story, the expedition to Renalut from the Baldia family includes him, his father, Rubens, Diana, and the Knights. And the Christie Trading Guild is also going with them to establish trade relations with Renalut. They continued their journey safely and reached an inn halfway. The protagonist felt sick and never would have thought that riding in a carriage was so excruciatingly difficult. Liner smiled and said that he had received a baptism of fire. Reed said that he would go and rest first and, having reached the room, fell on the bed, hugging the pillow. He called the memory and it said that he thought it was about to call him. The protagonist asked how things were with the search for memories, what he asked for. Memory thoughtfully answered that so far nothing worthwhile. He asked, anything, any clues? Memory answered, for example, a name, or they say that in the place where they are going, a prince named Racist lives and his animation from the game also appeared. Reed asked in surprise, is it possible to look at the animation? Memory showed the appearance of the prince in his head and said, this is what he looks like. Black hair, yellow eyes, and classic dark elf skin. How could they possibly meet him, so they had to remember? Memory asked, with that look, could he be a tsundere? He wasn't jealous of becoming a tsundere's stepbrother. The protagonist laughed and thanked him for what he was looking for. Suddenly, someone knocked on his room door. He opened it, and Chris appeared on the threshold. He asked, what happened? She apologized for disturbing him while he was resting and wanted to give it to him. Reed asked, is it a lollipop? Chris replied that she had made it herself from medicinal herbs because she had heard that he got sick in a carriage. She often got sick on long trips. The protagonist happily asked, is she doing it for him? She is a goddess. Chris noted that she always carries it with her and hopes he likes it. Lee sincerely thanked her. From tomorrow, he will try his best. He looked out the window and exclaimed, you can already see the Resolute outpost over there. There was one detail in Federella that was not related to the plot, but caused a heated discussion among the players. Namely, dark elves, east and west in one place. It's wonderful. Someone wears a kimono and someone is dressed like them. Like Japan, after the Meiji Restoration. Laner said that this is all because after the incident in Barlstow, Resolute entered into an alliance with Magnolia and began to imitate its culture. A great opportunity to broaden his horizons and take a closer look at everything. Reed pointed out the window and asked his father to look. These are rice fields. Laner noted that in Magnolia, they really are not found, but in Resolute, they are quite common. The protagonist thought that he would definitely ask Chris to establish trade in order to bring rice to the lands of Baldia. After a while, he looked at the huge castle. Within these walls, they were already waiting for those who did not like their union with the princess, so they had to get ready and be on the alert. The castle gates opened, and Reed got off the cart, stretching his back. The maid said that this was the guest mansion where they would be staying. Zack smiled and called out to them, welcoming them to Resolute. He was the manager of this mansion and his escort for the duration of their stay. Liner noticed that they were counting on him again. Reed asked in surprise, again? He said that he had helped them before, when there was an exchange of information between the capital and Renault. Zack noted that he was just acting as a carrier pigeon. The mansion is decorated in a style as close to Magnolia as possible. It may also seem unusual to them, but there are hot springs here. He asked them to rest and enjoy. The protagonist happily thought, hot springs, this is just paradise. After a while, he lay down on the bed and exclaimed happily, they finally arrived. Diana greeted him and he asked in surprise, what kind of outfit? She said that while they were in Resolute, she would be the protagonist's bodyguard and maid. If he needed anything, he could feel free to ask her. Reed was surprised and asked, then he would rely on her, but would she really be able to fight in this outfit? Diana smiled and asked him not to worry, since there were some hidden things here. For example, this one is very convenient to use. Reed sheepishly asked her to stop and thanked her. She asked, is he sure? The protagonist wondered why she only had hidden weapons. Do knights even use them? She answered, not all knights, of course. Men and women are built differently. Sometimes it is impossible to win in a head-on collision. For her, hidden weapons are a way to compensate for the difference in strength when she fights men. She was ready to do anything to get into the knightly order. Reed asked, she tried so hard and it was all for Rubens? Diana smiled and probably agreed, since he, who used to be a crybaby, tried so hard, so she tried her best. After all, she did it primarily for herself and not for him. In any case, while they are in Resolute, she will be the servant of Mr. Reed, and once again asked for his favor. She was ordered to stay in the same room with him, so he can consider her just air. Lee thought, as for him, she is too noticeable for air. Then he will sleep for a while, and asked her to wake him up if something happens. Asna went to Farah and said that the Baldia family has arrived at the guest mansion. According to her, the daughter who will soon marry the Prince of Agnolia, to accompany such a princess is a task. Usually meant that they wanted to get rid of her, and when the princess went to Magnolia, her personal guard would follow her. She understood everything immediately as soon as her father suggested this task. And her brothers, envious of her sword skill, probably complained about her. Sometimes she felt offended why she was sent abroad, but she said nothing and accepted it. The main thing is to hone the sword skill, and so, at 12 years old, she, Asna became the princess's sword. The woman shouted in displeasure that this was wrong and the angle of the right hand was too soft. She was the princess of this country and asked her to be aware of her role. Farah fearfully asked for forgiveness, and the woman continued shouting that the princess must be an example for the people, so mistakes are unacceptable. She must be perfect. Asna asked her to wait and asked, "Isn't this too strict?" The woman looked at her angrily and asked, "Is this an order from His Majesty and Mistress? Is there a problem with this?" She asked them to get ready, as they had lost time again because of them. Asna apologized in confusion. Such strictness seemed excessive for such a young girl. The lessons lasted from morning until late evening. In addition to teaching Renalut, she studied the culture of the Magnolia Empire, the state structure, the aristocratic lands. It seemed that the rumors about her future marriage with the Empire were true, and she was told that Princess Farah lived like this even before she became her bodyguard. And spending time with her, she began to want to be her support. Asna asked if it was hard for her. Farah answered that everything was fine and she had gotten used to it, after which she thanked her for caring. Pain and strictness were not a problem. She just had to endure and try. But did she know that when mom and dad did not pay attention to her at all, she felt a little sad? Asna hugged her, and Farah remembered her mother's words that her future husband should be Prince Magnolia, and she should not get attached to the Margrave's son under any circumstances. She thought she understood, but still, what to wear and what to eat was decided by her mother. She had hardly chosen anything herself, so since this man had come to her himself, she wanted to decide for herself whether to let him be near her. She remembered that once, in order to feel the atmosphere of Magnolia before the wedding, she secretly went to the lands of Baldia, and seeing the outside world for the first time, she was so excited that she got lost. I wonder if the boy who helped her then still lives in that country? She hopes that he is doing well and that they will meet someday. Reed looked at Farah's painting in surprise and said, "Such a beautiful and skillful work." Zack asked if he liked this painting. The protagonist noted that a very beautiful woman was depicted. Diana smiled and muttered, "He is a romantic." Reed exclaimed in confusion, "Not really, he just admired it a little." Zack noticed that it was a painting of Lady Eltia, Lord Elias's concubine. The protagonist was horrified and thought, is Mrs. Eltia the mother of Princess Farah? Did he really fall in love with the mother of his future wife? He said that Mrs. Farah was very similar to her. Zack said quite happily, since he liked Eltia, he would definitely appreciate Mrs. Farah. Reed asked Mr. Zack, is he against his marriage with the princess, right? He has no right to say anything, but he just wants her to be happy. The protagonist thought that in Renalut, Baldia is treated differently. Some are hostile, some are neutral, and some supportive. Father said that His Majesty Elias is similarly favorable to their union, and in that case, the first thing to do is to get this person's support. He apologized for touching on this topic. If the princess is like in that portrait, he might fall in love at first sight. Then he will support him? Zack smiled and said, of course he would gladly support him. Reed was delighted and thanked him, recorded the promise he made. Zack sighed heavily and said that Leaner's son is the real future. He asked if Reed had done something again. Zack smiled and noted that he had asked him to support his love line with the princess, and at the same time instantly grasped the political situation in Renalut and his position. Leaner said discontentedly that it would not hurt him to learn to hide his claws. Zack said that he was completely for him. Leaner said, made him talk like that. He thought that Zack has a blood relationship with the king's concubine, Eltia, and is the current head of the Riverton house. In addition, they are allies of Renalut. And if such a person says that he will support his son, this is very encouraging. Zack said they would get down to business about the audience with the king tomorrow, and about Norris's actions. He called out to Raisis and apologized for the intrusion. Everything was going according to plan. He thanked him, and Raisis said that he should thank him. Only because he accepted his offer could he be useful to him. And Norris said that Lady Eltia probably does not take Lady Liesl's feelings into account at all. A terrible person. He thought that Raisis and Farah were half-brother and sister. His mother, Queen Liesl, was related to Norris, and since by secret agreement Farah would marry Magnolia, Raisis would be the only child of royal blood who would remain in Renalut. If Elias only loved Lady Eltia, and the fact that Farah hardly saw Raisis, it was Eltia's fault, because she did not love him. His Majesty visits Queen Liesl only occasionally, but visits Eltia every day. And indeed, Raisis began to notice how his mother sometimes smiled sadly. Raisis said discontentedly that it was mean to upset his mother, and that he would never become a king like his father. Norris put his hands on his shoulders and said that everything would be fine. He would always be by his side. If he followed his advice, he would become both a good king and a good man. Norm called out to His Highness and said that he was counting on him tomorrow, and asked him to try to be on his guard. Raisis said discontentedly that he knew without his reminders that he would definitely protect his sister. In the meantime, Norris stood near the stone wall on the street and asked how the prince was feeling. Shadow answered that everything was as before. He trusted him unconditionally and was unlikely to suspect. Norris asked to let him know if something happened. It seemed everything was going according to plan. Well, let the villager from Magnolia hold on. Farah put on the dress and asked, "Is this how it is?" It is the first time she wears such clothes. It is unusual for her. Asna smiled and said that it suits her very well. She smiled and thanked her. "I wonder if the groom will like it like this." Asna confidently agreed and said, "Okay." In her opinion, she is especially beautiful today. He will definitely like it. Suddenly a woman knocked on the door and said she sees that she did put on the dress that she sent. Farah bowed and thanked her for such a gift. Asna looked at it and thought that the words were sharp, like ice needles, and they certainly could not be called family. The groom this time is the son of a marquis, not a prince, but he has no right to disgrace Renalut. If he shows himself worthy, perhaps there will be talk of an alliance with the royal family. Farah said that she understood everything, and the woman noticed. That's good. She will go forward. Asna asked Farah, "Is she okay?" She agreed. It is already usual. Asna said after all, he is still a candidate for the groom. It is unlikely that they will send a completely worthless one, and then she can decide for herself what to do. She thinks so. Farah smiled and asked, "She is very kind. Does she know anything about him?" Asna said that only the name. "I think his name is Reed Baldia." Farah went to the window and whispered his name. Norris asked His Majesty about the recent advice. Can he take the initiative? They need to make sure that the Marquis' son is suitable for their princess. This is important. Elias asked, "Is this what he is talking about?" He said, "Let him deal with it." Norris thanked him and he asked not to allow rudeness, even if he is a marquis, but a nobleman of the empire. Norris said, "Of course, then he will definitely marry the queen to a representative of the imperial family. This will give Renalut a real impetus to prosperity." Elias said, "Perhaps he inspires himself with such a thing. Although no one hopes for him anyway, the fool." Meanwhile, Reed spun around the mirror and asked if he looked strange. Diana asked how many times he had been checking everything since morning. Reed called out to her in fear and said, "Just like a noble girl going to the prince." Diana said that he was very cute, but still he was a boy. It doesn't matter who is looking. You just need to stand with pride and be yourself. Clothes are just a shell. The main thing is who wears them. Reed asked her not to embarrass him like that. He would blush. Diana grabbed him by the cheek and said that if the main character were a girl, he would have already been proposed to by everyone. Zach entered the room and said that it was time and Liner was waiting. They went down the stairs, and he said that his friends told him something. They say that the main opposition, an elderly dark elf named Norris. Prince Raisis seems to be under his influence too. Reed thought that he got the information so quickly. He thanked him, because it was really valuable, but what did Eltia think? Zach said that it seemed that RNA also wanted Farah to marry a representative of the royal family, but her goals were apparently different from those of Norris, and he did not know her true intentions. The protagonist thought, that is, neutrality? Considering that she hardly knows him, this is logical. But Rais's main problem, if he is under the influence of Norris, who perceives him with hostility, is perhaps the most difficult. What does it take for the prince to recognize him and Farah? They may become brothers, he would like him to support them. Zach said that if this is so, then it is worth breaking Rais's heart once. It will be better. Reed asked in surprise, break a heart? He does not mean to make him crazy. Now one can say that he is literally blinded by Norris. He was a smart prince who sincerely cared about the country, but because of one accident, he fell under the influence of Norris. His behavior is contrary to the prince's model, and he is in an unstable mental state. He asked him to break this influence and can consider it a request from the nobility, who cares about the future of Renalut. Everything else, he can entrust him. Reed thought he had simply asked a question, and in response he received a whole official order from the nobles how everything had turned out. This is a chance to make a name for himself. He said that he wants him to open his eyes and will try his best. Zach said that he is very grateful that he agreed. Reed asked, why is he so attached to Norris? Zach apologized and said that he has no right to talk about it. After a while, Liner said discontentedly that he is late. The protagonist apologized and Zach said that he will go. He asked, is he not coming? Zach said no, but he is interested to see how he will show himself. Reed thought that he meant it. Elias is taken by carriage to the palace where the meeting with the king will take place. He thought that they would be taken to a large castle, but it seems to be used as a strategic fort. The military man asked if he was Marquis Liner Baldia. Was he not mistaken? Liner agreed and asked for an audience with His Majesty Elias. The man said that they had been waiting for them, so he would take them. But before that, those who go to the king are not allowed to take weapons with them. Liner looked at his men and said that he, Reed, Rubens, and Diana would go, and the rest would wait here. The assistant asked to take off their shoes here and said that they were already waiting behind this door. The servants opened the door, and the military stood in front of them. They walked forward and caught suspicious, curious, distrustful, and interested glances. The protagonist looked in surprise and thought that there was only one chair. Norris apologized and said that they had received word that only Marquise Liner had been invited to the audience with His Majesty, so only one chair had been prepared. Liner looked at Reed and asked, what did he think? He said that everything was fine. He would just stand next to his father and thought with displeasure, this is the tone when his father is truly furious. The protagonist looked at Norris and, noticing his angry look, thought, he doesn't particularly like him, does he? Liner said, until ordered to raise his head, he should kneel and bow a little. Everyone bowed obediently. Liner, the Marquis of the Borderlands, arrived from the Baldia lands of the Magnolia Empire. The military man ordered everyone to raise their heads, and in front of them was the family of King Elias. Farah was surprised, and Elias said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Liner noted, quite pleased. Reed thought, so this is King Elias. He apologized for all this pathos. Everyone was so eager to see him. Liner said, no way. For the princess's fiancé, this is quite natural. Elias asked if the one standing next to him was his son. Reed said that he was Liner's son, the ruler of the Bardia lands of the Magnolia Empire. He heard from his father about the conversation about Princess Farah and came to greet him. He is counting on his favor. Elias asked, they say he is about the same age as his son Raisis, so how old is he? The protagonist answered that he is 6 years old. As far as he knows, the same age as the princess. Elias asked Farah to introduce herself. Farah said that she is the princess of the kingdom of Ren-Sixalut and the daughter of His Majesty Elias. She is glad to meet you. Farah flapped her ears and the protagonist thought, I wonder what her ears mean. Eltia introduced herself and said that she is Farah's mother and that she is the model from that painting. Liesel introduced herself as Elias's wife, and he said that he would like to maintain good relations with him. How does he feel about their proposal? Reed thought that he did not expect to be asked right there, but he still thought about it a little, how to best answer. Races asked displeasedly that his father was having too much fun. Why ask such a question to a child? Norris noted that he was right, and Elias said that he was just asking. The protagonist thought that since he supported Racis's words, it means he does not want him to make an impression. Although he is interested in Racis, he must first focus on Norris, and then do what he fears most. Reed said that he is convinced that this alliance between Renalut and the Baldia house must take place at any cost. Farah was surprised, and Elias asked him to continue, as he was interested. The protagonist said that they border each other, and by strengthening ties, they will create a deterrent for neighboring states. But they are already in an alliance of empires. Is this not enough? Elias agreed and asked, so Magnolia cannot be trusted? The protagonist noted that he did not mean that. From Barlst's point of view, they may consider their alliance with Magnolia lacking efficiency. But marriage with Baldia will change the situation radically. Baldia is a margraviate that has the right to independently mobilize an army in case of a threat. After the marriage, hiding behind the protection of the wife and the allied state, it will be possible to quickly react without waiting for the order of the empire. There was some sense in that, and only one thing remained. Whoever dared to attack Renalut would see Baldia raising troops. If Barlst believed that, that was how they would increase the deterrence effect, which no dynastic marriage with the imperial house could provide. Races asked him not to talk nonsense. They were already in an alliance, so why the marriage? The alliance obliged them to act even without the marriage. Reed said he was right, but he wanted to show how Barlst would perceive it. Moreover, the alliance itself would not allow Baldia to act immediately. When using troops, the first priority is defense, and if Barlst only attacked their border, they would not be able to act without an official order. Is that right, father? Laner asked them not to pay attention. These were just the words of a child, but the effect of marriage on deterrence cannot be discounted. Elias asked, so they considered this an advantage against Barlst? Reed smiled and said that there were other arguments, but he would tell them about it after the marriage. Elias asked happily, saying that there were more ideas. Mr. Liner's son was frighteningly smart. Such an unconventional boy would become the Margrave's heir. If he were their enemy, he would not even be able to sleep peacefully. Norris called out to him with displeasure and cried out, these are just the words of a child. Elias said that Liner also approved of this and asked Racis to broaden her horizons. He asked permission to address the protagonist now, and noted that it was a reasonable and practical argument, thereby thanking him. Norris asked to be excused and said that he understood his idea, but words are only valuable when there is strength and valor behind them. A combination of mind and sword, that's what he was counting on. He would like to see Mr. Reed's fighting skills, and how does he feel about it? Everyone went to the place of the duel, and Reed thought that instead of meeting with Princess Farah, for some reason everything turned into a duel at the court. Diana handed him the sword and he thanked her, thinking, this wooden sword, she said. Unfortunately, the equipment was prepared extremely poor quality, and it looks like someone wanted to disgrace him. She personally picked up this sword, so he cannot worry. The protagonist happily exclaimed, she even took care of this. Diana asked him not to spare the one who allowed himself rudeness, no matter what. After some time, Reed noticed that Liesel and Elias were arguing about something. Suddenly, Raisis approached him, and Elias apologized for the wait, since they were forced to urgently change their enemy and his rival, his son Raisis. The protagonist was surprised and said that he did not believe that he would have to fight the prince. Rubens and Diana wished him luck, and he remembered Zack saying that before they came here, maybe they should break Rais's heart first. This is a request from the nobility who cares about the future of Renalut. So he knew? Reed stood in front of Raisis and he asked with displeasure, "What's with the grin?" The protagonist said that he just suddenly remembered something funny. What a smug one. He doesn't like him anymore. Elias said that it looks like both are ready and now there will be a duel between Mr. Reed and Raisis. The rules are simple. The fight ends if one gives up or if continuing the fight becomes impossible. The protagonist raised his hand and said, "Before starting, there is one favor. He would like only His Majesty Elias to be able to decide when the fight should be stopped. After all, this is an important duel and does not want anyone to interfere." Norris looked at him with displeasure and Elias agreed. Until he gives the command, the fight does not stop. Reed thanked him and Raisis said contentedly, as soon as he set foot here, he had already lost and it would be better for him to go back to his Magnolia. The protagonist said discontentedly, "So for him the Baldia domain is just a backwater, despite the fact that it borders Renalut. You can consider that these are just stupid words of a child." Raisis asked, "Did he hear that his mother is sick? How can the son of a woman who can't even cure herself fight?" Reed was furious and thought it was better not to react. Raisis said smugly, "What's more, it would be better for him to continue sucking his mother's breast. It suits him better." Reed thought that he can say whatever he wants about him. He can also close his eyes to the Baldia domain, but about his mother, who is still fighting the disease, he will not allow this. Nori set this up to provoke him. Raisis asked smugly that he has nothing to say, swallowed his tongue. Then they will begin the duel. Nora said contentedly that he will succeed, the naive prince. Raisis said that if he surrenders now, he will do without unnecessary pain. Reed asked him not to bother himself, or is he only strong in words? Raisis asked displeasedly, what did he say? He's talking to him nicely. Reed said, that's right, only in words. Raisis swung his sword, when suddenly he intercepted him and twisted his arm and put his face in the ground. Everyone watched in surprise at what was happening. Reed put his sword to his throat asking, is that all? Raisis began to get up and ordered him not to mock him. Next time he will not underestimate. He also ordered him not to act like a hero. He does not even have a proper blow. They crossed swords again and Raisis said, fool, as soon as they cross swords, victory will be his. He thought that if he went into close combat, he would be able to push him through with his strength. Reed said that he probably thought so, and thought that it was written all over his face, when suddenly the protagonist pulled the sword aside and taking advantage of Raisis's weakening, he threw it to the ground and walked up to him, holding the sword to him. Reed asked, can he see it? In the end, these are just words. Norris angrily clenched his teeth and asked, can't be, what does this mean? Diana exclaimed joyfully, he is so stunning. Raisis came to his senses, and the protagonist thought, has he finally understood? That there is simply a colossal difference in level between them. Raisis wanted to say, but Reed asked him to stand up and asked, isn't he the proud Prince Renalut? And after all this, he loses to a simple villager from Magnolia. Will he lose to someone he insulted by calling a son of a sick mother? He gave him a fake wooden sword and dressed himself in protection and uniform, and he is not ashamed? The protagonist ordered him to get up with displeasure. He would not forgive him so easily. He would destroy his pride. He asked, and even after that he would not get up? If he really did not intend to fight, he could admit defeat, but then he would be a pathetic, weak-willed coward and a weakling. He thought that Prince Raisis could become a wise king, like his father Elias. How suddenly he got up and asked with displeasure, who was the weakling here? He would definitely knock him down. Reed looked into his eyes, filled with anger, and he accepted his challenge. They continued the duel, in which Raisis began to lag behind.